Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the grand finals of the NLC 2023 Spring Split. My name is Middlecar, and joining me to break down the action in this best of five, we've got a couple of the smartest minds here over at the NLC. Of course, Veteran, my usual partner, and we got Rudu here as well.
Yeah, that was all too much hype for me, I'm afraid. I haven't found the smartest people, but hey, I'm happy to be here still. This is actually going to be the most intense series that I think Playoffs has had, and that's after what we've already seen so far.
I think you're smart, Rudu, dude. You're at least top 3 smartest people here.
Yes! That's podium placing.
I don't know, man. I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit there, Veteran. But like you've already alluded to, Rudu, we do have what should be a very, very exciting match up today. Of course, we have got Riddle, who have been at the top of the table pretty much the entire run through this NLC split. And then we've got Verdant, who have kind of come from nowhere, honestly, Rude, to be this force in the playoffs.
Incredibly so. I think that their surge kind of happened in the last week of regular season, crazily enough, where they had a so close game versus Ruddy that they didn't end up winning, and then had a banger game on the final day, which secured them playoffs position. And then since then, the ride has only gotten better for them. They 3-0'd Ruddy after losing to them in the final week in playoffs, and then they had one of the most intense series up against Nord that the NLC has ever seen. That's not I don't think that's a bold take. If you watch the series, you know I'm not lying. Like,
the final game in
crazy.
particular. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there have been some big performances as well. All right, I'm wondering if we can pull up those rosters so we can have a look at some of those players, because I think for Verdant particularly, we want to be looking at those solo laners. Nilla and E-Roll popped off massively, particularly in that last best of 5, Veteran.
Yeah, I mean, Nilla was a guy that we were looking at the start of the split as potentially being the guy Verdant would build their team around. Big difference between Verdant and other teams. They had a heavy carry, heavy split pushing top laner. But the guy that has brought the whole lineup together with his performances later on has been that man in the mid lane, Errol. Going up against Fury, one of the best mid laners the NLC has ever produced. Going toe-to-toe with him, that Azir in particular in multiple games, including in their final week of regular season, being an absolute monster late game, even with some misses here and there. I remember that backdoor on the final day, for example. But you know, he's really come into his own. He's a full carry player. He's shown he's willing to take the risks, and off the back of those risks, he's developed into a formidable mid laner. And he's against a guy that we've looked at as more of like a utility mid laner, like the Lissandra, the Asol, rather than a carry mid laner. Errol is the damage carry to be feared in the mid lane matchup today. And that's definitely not something I thought I would be saying, especially since all of my prep was done for Nord. Thanks for that, Verdant. Like, you threw, I had Nord prep, I had Ruddy prep, and now Verdant are in the fight. Great. Brilliant.
I think that really sort of demonstrates that Verdant aren't a team that we necessarily expected to be here, but it's been off some big performances towards the end of the split, and now that we've been into playoffs, that has propelled them towards this final, towards EMEA Masters. But we can't ignore who they're going against, Rue. If we're talking about the Verdant solo laners being pretty strong, Riddle have got a couple of decent solo laners of their own.
They do. Banderas did a great job trying to sort of control WoW in their series versus Nord, which has led them to this final. We've got FireRain, as Veteran mentioned, right, playing this exceptional role style for their composition and really allowing every other style of gameplay on the rest of the map, so Johan can be very aggressive, so that we can see Jinjo, Kiba down on the bot side absolutely explode if necessary. The multifaceted nature that we've seen from FireRain has allowed for really good stuff for the rest of Riddle.
But there is one player, Veteran, who I think has really stood out on this Riddle roster amongst some very good players, and that is, of course, our split MVP, Winter 7. Now, if you don't know who Winter 7 is, he is otherwise known as Johan. He has changed his name, but regardless of what the summoner ID is, Veteran, this guy owns the Rift when he's there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually also think that his particular playstyle is being benefited by the increasing patches. We're post 13.5 now, we're into the new jungle changes, the very, I guess you could say, efficient, and let's be real, farm-heavy style he plays pre-6 actually matters a lot more now. This is a guy, and honestly, all of Riddle have been defined by this, with the exception of, you know, the introduction of Ginger in the bot lane, who plays quite slow at the beginning, but makes everything he does in team fights count. And with Winter 7, formerly Johan, that's no exception, even if he's not in the late game scaler. His Lee Sin team fighting, probably the best team fighting we see of any Lee Sin in almost all the ERLs, always on point, understands the enemy win con, and counters it with his mass amounts of utility at those stages. And if he's on a damage carry, he's shown he can make that count in later stages as well. Feels like there's a point in the game that Verdant can't let Riddle get to, where Riddle feel incredibly comfortable, everyone feels on point, they play team fights methodically, they play it strategically, and ironically though, Verdant are this team that we used to characterize as, wow, they kind of go to late, they are able to make the game work at that point, and that's honestly where they've taken Riddle before. So they've hit Riddle where they're most comfortable, and they may have to do that again here. But Johan, yeah, he's one of the most consistent aspects of the team. Now Winter 7, just throwing them off with that name change and messing up my homework.
Yeah, who's this guy? Who's this guy in the jungle?
Oh
Where has he come from? What is he doing?
Our scouting is useless. Oh my god.
That's fantastic. But I did like that you kind of alluded to the head-to-head between Riddle and Verdant over the course of this split, because it has been contested, right? And coming into the day, the team that has most recently beaten the other Rudu is Verdant.
Yeah, they like you said, like you mentioned, took down Riddle. That was again another exceptional match that we've seen from them. And Veteran bringing up these late game team fights is the exact area where we've seen Verdant really thrive. I think that for me, heading into this matchup specifically, my eyes are actually going to be more drawn toward Taxa, obviously playing against the MVP of the regular split. The question becomes, is he going to be able to match that meticulous nature that Winter has had through the regular season? If we're going to see Taxa, for me, in the series versus Ruddy, was absolutely exceptional. Got his Gragas band away for the back part of the series and was absolutely instrumental in their 3-0. When they played against Nord, didn't look like the same jungler, unfortunately. Definitely had a bit of a rougher time of things and was having sticky games on Lee Sin, really rough ones on Gragas as well. So coming into this matchup, the sort of versatility, or the volatility rather, that we've seen from Taxa needs to be at that higher end. I want to see the best performance from Taxa today because he has to match up against Winter.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be a tough task, but I feel like Taxa as a player has had those highs at various points throughout the split, and like you say, if he can pull out a Ruddy-like performance, I mean, in his career as well, right? We can't forget this guy is an NLC champion, the only NLC champion playing in this final. But I kind of want to get a little bit of a look at how the casting team in general has anticipated this matchup going out, because we've had a little bit of back and forth, and whilst we have got a lot of people favouring Riddle here, Verdant getting a couple of votes as well.
Wow.
Twitter.
I mean, let's be real. If we do the middle court vote any other way, guys, they can't win. So they have to vote against the champions at the top here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's be completely real about what we're looking at here, okay? And whereas I've gone with the 3-0, all right, I'm just gonna say it. That's kind of an FU to Aragon in particular. You can't catch up with me anymore. I've locked it. I am officially the highest ranked color caster on the NLC. I expect my trophy to be sent to me tonight. But I do think, despite the 3-0 that I've got there is actually a strong chance of Verdant making this game really close. I.e., there's a strong chance that Rudu actually ends up on top at the end here, which is the worst case scenario, of course, for many reasons. But Verdant, the thing that we're talking about here, when we look at the solo lanes, we look at the bot lane, is there's another big change other than Winter 7 that Riddle have done, and that is the Jinjo bot lane, right? And the Jinjo bot lane is much more aggressive in laning phase than the Reptile bot lane was. So you now are in a position where it's not an even map that's being slowly taken to late game scenarios. It's much more volatile, tending towards bot side, and in those scenarios, Nyla, who was absolutely instrumental in getting them the win over Nord by taking the fight to WoW when it mattered, he's left alone against a Banderas that's never been properly played towards over the split and is less likely to be played towards now. This is an element where Nyla could push through, take some wins, shock them, particularly in the early stages for anyone who voted Verdant first game there, and maybe make the series close for all of those 3-2 predictions.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely got a possibility, and I think that the insane nature of this series, I think, Rudy, we were speaking about this a little bit earlier on today, it is really highlighted by the fact that it is so difficult to predict. I think it depends massively on what Verdant show up. It's not just about Taxa having a good day. Kind of everybody needs to have a good day, because Riddle have been the model of consistently throughout this split, Rue, and so if Verdant are going to want to match them, they need to be firing on all cylinders.
They do. The inconsistency, right, touched a little bit on Taxes in the last series. Klai also had a few moments where there were Spider Nautilus in the wrong direction as opposed to, entering team fights incorrectly as opposed to trying to leave them. But equally, we've seen Klai, and I think that Klai sort of maybe went under the radar a little bit in the last series, found several hooks on Woolite in that Game 5 as Thresh, which stopped Nord from winning. And it's those types of hooks, those types of moments that are winning you games. Klai, one of those players that can win you games, but equally we've seen them be lost in that same token. So, like you mentioned, Vinilcott, it is just, if the right Verdant turn up today, we're going to be in for a great series. But there is that part of us that also knows we can expect this from Riddle. We're beginning to see more from Verdant, and they've made it to the final. We can't underestimate how far that they've come. But if they're not quite on fire throughout all 5 games, all 3 games, however long this series goes, they could be in a bit of trouble.
You want to talk about support differences. A man with something to prove is Kiba in that bot lane with Jinjo, someone who can actually match him on aggression, release him from the Lulu prison that he's been in. He's a guy who could definitely try to match the playmaking potential someone like Klai's done. Klai's played these very wide map states, looked to make picks on champions like Nautilus. Kiba is a guy who's tried to do that as well when he's had those kinds of champions, but we've often seen him relegated to enchanters and scaling into that late game where Riddle suddenly feel very comfortable to play the game. Against Verdant, maybe they get rattled early on and they realize they can't play that kind of game against them because Verdant are happy to match into those late game scenarios and be comfortable as well. Maybe the solution there is unleash Kiba, let him show support difference, try to get him another MVP again, and match Klai, who, as you said, very instrumental against Nord. Kiba could maybe prove to be instrumental here.
We are provided with quite a sort of tantalizing prospect, right? Because we can either have a Verdant that goes late, tries to match Riddle and fight them where they're strongest, or a Verdant that is going to try and outpace and get one of those leads before Riddle can get themselves on the board. We are going to be going into Champion Select very shortly before this, and Game 1 of Riddle versus Verdant.
On cooldown, securing himself a double kill. He's alive. He's able to hold. Wow, we'll finish him up. Wow, we'll go down though in response. And this might just be the moment for Verdant. Akabane gets the cage down, but he's going to pay the ultimate price. Woolite is exhausted, and Verdant have done it to go to EMEA.
Get some plates here onto Woolite. They're not going to be able to take out the Terran once again. Riddle on, on board in the bottom lane. They are able to get quite low and take him down. A shutdown for Johan. Now he can use the items he's stolen away. Jinjo securing a double. Akabane getting stunned.
The Drake is definitely gone, but ready. Riddle to go in here and try and punish them on the exit. No Baron available, but they only find Klai was nice to engage, and now the re-engage comes through from the side. 3-man kick from Texa. Another fight is fully erupting, and no one dies on the side of Verdant. They can just chase them down.
Aren't able to push it further forward from it. Another cage going up. Fury locked in this one. Thrown into the skies. Dead as well. A double for Banderas. Johan going under the tower. They found another stun onto under the turret. Hold on. Riddle, they're doing it. Okay, guys. Right, if I was not hyped before, I am hyped now, and Champion Select is just a few minutes away. Gentlemen, I want to get your thoughts on what sort of picks we're going to be expecting to see in this series, and could be defining who becomes our NLC champion. Veteran, I'll chuck to you first on this.
Azir, Lissandra, the two champions I associate the most with this mid lane pairing. Lissandra on the side of Riddle there on Fire Rain's hands. Brilliant utility champion, helps set up the team fights later on for his damage carries, which sometimes includes even Johan, or Winter 7 as we call him now. And Azir for Errol has been a monster. Even when counterpicked by the Veigar on the side of Fury, he's shown to continue to be useful. I think this mid lane matchup is going to have to be addressed in the bans or in the picks.
And I think, first of all, I was going to go with Lee Sin. That's my other one.
Yeah.
I mean, Veteran kind of alluded this already in the pre-show that Winter 7 has been our best team fighting Lee Sin. Taxa, on the flip side, has been a very powerful Gragas player. That ban makes absolute sense as well. And Nila has carried no end of games on the Nara as well. This is a little bit weird for our drafts, I feel like, that we've seen from the NLC, because typically so much of it had been focused toward the bot lane. But now we're starting to see key players get their key champions picked away. We are going to see a lot different a style of draft.
Yeah, and I like that we're seeing a lot of this initial focus towards some of the junglers. Winter 7, Taxa, both pretty damn good on their day, and these bridge sort of picks are really the things that they thrive on. That Gragas that we talked about being banned out a lot because of that Ruddy series taken away from Taxa, and that Cassiopeia actually removed from Erol, one of his key pocket picks.
Yeah, and the Cassiopeia is very interesting because Riddle are typically a front-to-back composition when they do their team fights. If they have a flanker, it's normally Winter 7 on that Lee. The Lee's being taken away. You can expect full front-to-back, and Cassio is in her element against those front-to-back compositions. And with the heavy mobility that Johan or Winter 7 now likes to use, Cassio counters that as well. So everything Riddle have banned here, the Gragas, the Cassio, obviously the Nars Comfort for Nyla, they counter front-to-back compositions. Riddle know their own strengths. They want to make sure Verdant don't counter that.
And you get to see Verdant taking away the powerful bot lane pairing. Not a single bot lane ban here at all between the two sets of bans. And Xayah first pick for Riddle. The Rakan steal for Clyde gives Clyde that agency to find engages. They are going to want some more engage though with the rest of the team. If they can find some topside dive, that's going to enable the Rakan even further. And maybe they can find a team fight to punish the Xayah pick.
The Ezreal here in towards the Xayah obviously has counterplay against the QE from Xayah, but Ezreal, we normally associate that with compositions that play heavy towards solo lanes. That allows Ezreal to be able to curve into the later stages of the game and allows the Rakan, crucially, to enable those sides without the risk of dive that is open to other non-Xayah champions in the game. So it's clear that Verdant are looking to play to those solo lanes and potentially to Nyla himself and expose that area of Riddle that we were talking about in the pre-draft.
Yeah, and that's really the style the Verdant have been playing throughout the playoffs. Kevo has had 6 games of Ezreal over the course of the entire split. 5 of those have been in playoffs, so no surprise to see Verdant go back to a strategy that has been working out a lot for them. Riddle, though, really doubling down on a lot of this dive, a lot of this damage with the Vi and Annie.
See hero, kill hero right now for Riddle. They have Vi, they've got Annie. If they spot anybody out of position, they've got all the engage tools to try and pick them off. Whether that's Kevo on a bit of a mission on his own in a side lane, or that's Taxa going in for some vision that he doesn't have full access to. Riddle have got really good ways to pick people off, but equally with this Maokai lock in, Verdant have got really good ways at spotting people out early on. Setting up around those objectives with the saplings is going to be crucial for trying to spot those flanks, which we know that Riddle are going to need.
Huge thing here, though, the Annie is a flex pick. Kiba could easily take that in towards the bot lane and put it into the Rakan Ezreal, and it's really obvious how that can counter a roaming Rakan playstyle, given the point-and-click CC on the Ezreal. The Vi, also point-and-click CC on the Ezreal, but the Annie can be flexed in towards the mid lane if by the 4th pick, Verdant reveal a composition where a more general counter that you can generally find the support better than anywhere else can be picked to stylistically counter everything Verdant do. A very strong opening from Riddle here, does not give all the information over to Verdant, gives them a lot of flexibility, but does counter the Verdant composition as is.
Second round of bans then got to come through. Your solo lanes, the expected target area, as you mentioned, Veteran, that Annie can definitely be flexed. But I think that nobody's going to disagree with banning out Nilo. One of the sort of elephants in the room was that this guy has been slamming every single top matchup that he's had. won solo kills versus Rifty in every game in the Ruddy 3-0, handled WoW exceptionally well in their best of 5 last week as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them head toward a 5th pick for the top lane. Going for a blind in that top side doesn't seem like how we'd expect Verdant to play. The Victor, a much safer blind. E-Roll is very proficient on the Victor as well, has played this when the Azir, when the Cassio haven't looked as good, and it makes perfect sense.
And it also just sort of fits into the team that they're going against a little bit better as well. Whilst Firerain, very, very skilled player, I don't see him as the sort of guy that is going to pressure E-Roll as much. So you kind of find just sort of blind picking that Victor in the mid lane. Riddle now going to have to reveal where that Annie is going, and all the flex picks going to have to be answered by the time Verdant go for their R5.
And we get to see as well, Banderas just on tank duty once again. This is no surprises, right? We've seen him play this before. If he's trying to keep down the top laner, Ornn certainly makes a lot of sense to Sion band away, so you can't opt into maybe the best tank that we've got in the meta right now. Maybe Cho'Gath got slotted in here just as nicely, but Ornn works absolutely fine.
This is actually a classic Vi composition, or Ahri composition, I should say. Vi sets up the Ahri charm very easily. The point-and-click CC from the Annie substitutes for example, the Morgana, which used to be the really classic one. Ranged point-and-click CC is the lifeblood of an Ahri because it allows her to guarantee charms, guarantee Qs, guarantee her persistent damage that she needs to be putting out in fights, and basically makes it impossible for low mobility, I should say, champions like Victor to function. And even here with the point-and-click CC can make it very difficult for the Ezreal to function. So they have a composition that counters the Ezreal almost entirely. They have an Ornn into a Cassante matchup. That's interesting. So Verdant, even though they had the potential to roam towards solo lanes before and snowball them, they've been like, you have too much point-and-click CC, we no longer feel safe leaving the Ezreal alone in bot lane, so we have to fall back into a lower damage top side, and now it's a very easy scenario for Riddle to defend themselves against the Verdant comp and get what they've got. I think Riddle feel very comfortable in this draft.
And for me, looking at the Cassante into that top lane, it's not what we've seen from Nilla. To touch on these top laners a little bit, they actually played in Telia League and in a best of 5 in a final about 3 or 4 months ago. It went the way of Nilla at that time, obviously, or of Banderas, excuse me, but it's definitely going to be an all-out 5v5. For game number 1, I think this is very underwhelming. I was expecting to see Fiora and Ekton, let's get some everything against the fight, but this wasn't it.
In fairness, the Cassante does destroy the Ornn in lane. It's just not the typical kind of carry champion that we were hoping for. We were looking for like a Camille or Fiora or something like this, right? Obviously the Jax is banned out, the Jace is banned out, but Ornn has a very difficult time against the Cassante because of the unstoppable mechanic of the W. It denies your brittle, it denies your ult, it denies Ornn the ability to trade that he's normally so comfortable doing. If not pre-6, at least post-6. He normally wins all of these. Cassante, kind of an unstoppable machine on top lane, but they don't have the freedom to just leave the Ezreal alone bot lane on the point-and-click CC, and the Cassante won't 1v9 the whole game.
Verdant maybe in a bit of a rough spot in terms of how they're going to be dealing their damage in the team fights, but they will not care about that for now. We are on to the Rift for game 1 of the final. Riddle looking to take their first NLC title after being in the league since its very inception. Verdant trying to make it 1-for-1 in terms of splits to wins. And it all gets started here, first time onto the Rift.
With Verdant having, as we've illustrated, a little bit of a lower damage composition with Nilla on the Cassante and that top side, it puts a lot of stock into the E-Roll basket. And I don't think that's a bad basket to be having stock in. This is the only rookie in this tournament, in this series, and has lived up to a reputation that he's really exceeded, honestly. In a Game 5 versus Nord, absolutely demolished them to claw back an absolute game victory that they deserved, and now on the Victor is going to have to be a powerful DPS source through the late game Verdant have got the tools to enable this Victor. They've got a lot of frontline to keep him safe, but it's on E-Roll again to step up, use those hands, and make sure he can dish out the damage.
They have frontline, but does Ornn care about that frontline? The Victor cannot step up if the Ornn is still holding onto the ultimate, and if the Ornn lands that ultimate, the follow-up crowd control, the follow-up burst, the follow-up damage is all there on Riddle, two of which are at range without any need to risk their own HP to do so. And speaking of one of those range alternatives, Kiba in the bot lane there on the Annie. He has a lot to prove. He has a champion that he can prove it on. He's talked a lot in interviews. He's talked very big about how much he deserves these MVPs, about how much more recognition he deserves, and needs to prove it now. That Ezreal's not taking that cleanse by accident. He's aware of the threat that this Annie can have. Jinjo, Kiba kind of setting up a wave here where they might want to do something, but that realistically slow pushes back in. But you can at least see with that attempt there, the hunger that they have to try and make something happen in the 2v2. Riddle not content with just scaling for late game.
And you can see both of our junglers know that this area of the map is going to be the point of prio. Starting on that top side, we will abandon the tanks for the early game. Top lane can live up to its reputation, and Taxa, Winter7 can both have an impact down on this bot side. Expect to see them just hover around this bot lane, even if nothing actually happens. You want to protect both of them from any danger.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've seen wards on the respective bot side camps of both of these junglers. He will take a fair bit of damage, but not going to be dropping down. But it is a different style here for Verdant, or something that they haven't played in a fair while. But on the side of Riddle, playing towards Jinjo and having him be a bit more of an integral carry as part of your composition is something that we've seen from them a couple of times already.
Yeah, when we saw him substituted in, it was, you know, after Reptile had to take a leave for medical issues, and they instantly just started playing Lucian, Nami, Caitlyn, Lux type lanes, where they would start forcing, would start finding prio and having a bit of something to do down on that bot lane. And when you're playing up against an Ezreal in particular, champion fairly weak through the early laning phase, you get emboldened to make those aggressive plays and try to be that productive, proactive early game bot lane.
And that is very characteristic of Jinjo throughout all of his teams. When he was on Gamer Legion, for example, you saw a very unique dynamic they had, playing heavily around bot almost every single game. And when he left that team, it almost seemed aimless without that. Every team Jinjo goes on normally tends towards these hyper-aggressive bot lanes, and you see that personality go on towards Riddle, and that's very good here because it gives Verdant something that they have to respond to. They would prefer to just play towards Nilla here, play towards what is objectively a hard-winning matchup, but they don't have the option to do that because Riddle, they path towards bot lane, they draft towards bot lane, they pivot their whole game towards bot lane, and that's different to the Riddle that Verdant are used to seeing.
This is a very early rotation from Clyde coming out of the bot lane to secure a bit of vision. I'm not sure if he actually spotted out that control ward. So Riddle with a bit of information there, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get too much stuff for his time.
Yeah, I mean, even just spotting out that pink ward gives an extra little bit of information. It's not going to be, you know, intrinsic to a success story for Verdant, but it means that Taxa's not going to go for an invade that he doesn't see.
Big thing though, Ezreal did ward the river before the next waves crashed into each other, aware that Kiba must be rotating to topside. It looks to me as if Rakan was matching a potential Kiba roam, so Kevo has the info, but can he even realistically do anything about it? He knows that mid support was looking to rotate into his side, he's spamming for help because he knows he'll be trapped on the next wave, but he has to risk it or he loses so much more.
Yeah, you're going to lose a lot of experience, a lot of CS in the long run. You might be able to step up for the XP itself, but you're going to need some help trying to crash this wave. Xayah can keep this outside of your turret. Ezreal notoriously weak with the wave clear as well, so not going to be finding it super easy like a Sivir, like a Jinx, to just push that wave in and force the crash in the traditional sense. So Taxa might just have to walk down into this bot lane, show some presence in a 3v2, and that's going to give a bit of a window for Winter7 to be productive elsewhere on the map. If he wants to go top lane, try and find an angle, maybe focus mid lane, he's got all of those tools open to himself.
Victor? Okay, very cool.
Taxa might be looking to ruin Riddle's day, at least the start of it, but Winter is also moving down into the bottom lane. Now, Taxa hasn't been explicitly spotted on vision, but with the way that Riddle are playing it, seems like they recognize they could be in danger here. This is Very patient stuff, and it's going to be rewarded. Instant engage, first blood for Kevo.
So difficult to try and react to there. Flash twisted advance is just outplayable. Jinjo doesn't get any flash distance. Clive follows up nicely with the CC, and Kevo even has enough space to find some skill shots through the wave. Gorgeous execution from Verdant.
They might be able to get a little bit more out of it here with that temporary numbers advantage on the bottom side, but Kevo going to take a reset, and no Dragon for the green team. Actually, Riddle, who are going to be able to pick this one up.
They're also a green team middle court. We've got to be careful with those.
Oh, crikey. Yeah, that's going to trip me up a couple of times. I love this. This is in for Taxa if he stays too long, but he stays just long enough to make the play work. And hey, you were getting gold on Kevo, the guy that we could play towards a little bit more in this scenario.
You are, but there was no need to step up on that wave whatsoever. None of the minions were going low. That was just greed. That was them wanting to push out the next wave to secure this Drake ASAP, when just slow pushing that wave in on towards the next, playing it safe and playing it slow, would guarantee that the opponents couldn't make a Drake play. But instead, he gets greedy, he rushes through, characteristic of how he normally plays on other teams, and is essentially why teams are forced to play around him, and as a result, they lose the Drake, they lose the tempo bot, and this Ezreal has a much easier time curving into his items. He definitely wasn't thinking he'd get that time with this draft, but now the Ezreal is in the game.
And now you get to see 4 versus 4s, excuse me, on this top side. Both of our supports level 4. Well, not level 6, excuse me. Here we go.
Kiba?
Hey, Nature's Grass thrown out, and it doesn't really hit onto anybody. Verdant need to be careful that they're not going to get collapsed on as Jinjo is moving up from bottom side river. If this play takes too long, then Verdant could get taken down. There's going to be the call of the Forge God. Only knocks up Nile, though. As in the top side, we've got a little bit of a 2v2, but here comes the Cassante to try and even it up. E-Roll has just been left by the rest of his team to die, and Riddle claim the Herald.
Oh my, but Kiba in that fight, by the way, he was threatening an engage with potential W flash on towards the side, and both Errol and Taxa and Climbing all went in on him, and all of them missed. Kiba kited all of them with flash, with ignite, with his stuns, kept them all in place, and by stretching Verdant as thin as they were, it was very easy for Fire Rain to get the flank in and pick them off one by one. Beautiful kiting by Kiba, very impactful, but just the threat of that Annie essentially causes Verdant to lose their minds and lose the opening big fight of the game.
And they lose the Herald as well on top of that, right? This impending 350 gold is going to go into a lane at some point and is added on to the deficit that they found. That's now 2 for 2 for Riddle in the early game neutral objectives. They found that first Drake. That one cost Jinjo his life. But this time round, they get the objective and they're able to take down the mid lane at Fort Verdant. The super carry that we're looking for through the late game going to be curved a little bit slower into his items just because he wasn't able to farm.
And you sort of see the value of the Ornn, really, in a fight like that. Banderas has not been having a fun time in the laning phase. Has honestly been getting bullied by Nilla to a fair amount, but the Ornn's one with the assist in that KDA column. Just a little hint of the value that this champion can provide when we get into team fights.
It's exactly what Veteran said, right? It doesn't matter if there's a massive front line, you're called the Forge God, hits regardless, because you can just go straight through it. And we get to see that even on that bot side, Kevo having that kill hasn't swayed the 1 versus 1 in any particular fashion, and Ezreal is still going to just farm up versus Azire, and that's about as best as you can hope for.
Two things though, since that kill on bot lane, they did Drake and they rotated heavy to top side. They haven't played with Ezreal whatsoever because Ezreal's function is to somewhat defend while they play around their winning lanes. And that top side, yes, Dion will be useful, but Nile is running away with the matchup up there. And that was a great scenario for them to do an opening Herald swap, but it didn't succeed. So they ended up in this situation where there's gold on the Ezreal, but they don't have the tempo on the map that they need, and now they're losing out on the bot advantage.
Wow.
Just a little bit too easy.
Yeah.
See hero, kill hero. Like we said in the draft, right? The Annie-Vi combo goes a little too crazy, and they didn't even need Fire Rain to make that one work. Cly, unfortunately, just a bit too far forward. It wasn't even like he was invading the enemy jungle at all. It was just Kiba spotted him with a stun and got him killed.
Oof.
Yeah.
I mean, support diff, that's all I can say. Team Kiba right here. Kiba wouldn't have done that. Kiba would have outplayed it all on his Rakan.
I think Kiba made it happen. I think that was the key thing for himself. But It has been a bit of a slower game one, which I think is going to suit Riddle in terms of the style that they like to play. And whilst we have seen Verdant try and go for a couple of these plays, it has been Riddle who've been able to get the main advantages coming out of the early game.
Yeah, and a lot of it, though, and this is going to be characteristic of the whole series, all right? And not to say anything on the quality of it, but thus far, impatience by one side has given advantages to the other. Like here.
Oh, might be saying a little bit more impatience. Double knocker onto Kiba, onto Winter Taxa. With his first kill of the game,
step.
the Vi dashes away and Nero will chase her down. Fire desperately getting one back with the Orb of Deception, and Winter Bolt breakering themselves away.
Smash on Taxa.
Jinjo pressuring onto Kevo, but just going to be a couple kills.
Yeah, Taxa flashed up to this top side. They're not done fighting yet. I think that Winter just barely gets away. Lasers going wide from E-Roll. They're not able to find the Vi, unfortunately, and it's a win for Riddle. Even though the kills are largely even, they're the ones who get to place this Herald.
I mean, you see Vi move on to the top side there, and Taxa chasing with the flash, and somehow Taxa burns the flash, but doesn't get in range for the W, or Vi is far tankier than I recall her being on a Black Cleaver, I don't know. But either way, she manages to survive, and Fire Rain, a little bit of desperation, a little bit of luck, but is able to pick up kills as the first bounty of the game. This mid lane's going heavily in Riddle's favor off of these early skirmishes. You have to think they're going to be happy with how this turned out. I really hope that the camera pans topside and I can see how this Vi lived. Clyde barely living here already. Winter just missing. Fire Rain desperately wants it. Does barely get it. And now let's see what happens with the Vi here. Taxa does move forward, does have the W flash. It will forever remain a mystery gone to the ages.
I think it's
like
just
the
Vi
Easter
passive.
Island heads.
Right? Surely it's just a Vi passive proc and he just walks away.
No one will ever know. No one will ever know.
It is indeed a mystery for the ages, but Keeper's in his position.
Oh, yeah, Kevo's maybe out of position. He's fine.
That's a win.
Just press cleanse, press arcane shift, and you're out of there.
What do you think comes up earlier? Quick test middle court. What do you think comes up earlier? Annie R or?
I think Tibbers might come up quicker.
Might do. I think that's a win right there. I think you're happy with that. Next time it's a flash burn, the next time it's a kill.
Big wins down on that bot side then for Riddle, and sort of the small story, I suppose, of this game has been that Verdant are struggling a little bit. Nilla's all out in that top side. I think, yeah, we can pan away from that because it is, at the end of the day, 2 tanks.
I mean, Bandros is getting pretty low. He's pull the fourth god and gets knocked off onto lane, but he was never going to kill him, mate. Actually, for Verdant, top lane has been going well. That lead in CS hasn't grown any further, but Nilo has consistently been at Banderas' tower, at applying this pressure to him, whilst the rest of the map kind of not going as well.
There's so few counterplay options available in that matchup, though, right? So long as the W is preserved somewhat, there isn't really an opportunity for you to lock down the Nyla as there is with other champions. The unstoppable mechanic makes Cassante such a headache for all of these tanks and makes him essentially the preeminent anti-tank champion in the game. I'm still of the opinion he should be a mid laner, and if anyone's going to do that, it would be Fire Rain. So please show him how it's done.
You're leaking the script. Better and stop. We're going to have to put you off right there. Riddle know this clearly, and like you mentioned, if anyone's going to do it, it is going to be Fire Rain. He's played set mid lane already through regular season, so I doubt that the Cassante is too far out of the wheelhouse.
Yeah. Interesting siege happening here.
Verdant sort of just overloading, going, we will take first tower of the game, but Riddle just about going to be able to stop them without anyone going down. And hey, Winter's going to be getting a load of gold with that Herald summoned in the mid lane.
And he gets the turret as well. Breaks that one first and might even go for a second one. There's nobody here to defend this.
Nice.
Riddle going to take 2 turrets mid lane. It's going to be gold funneled exclusively into Winter. And if this Vi wasn't in a great position, surviving Maokai dives before, it's going to be even more terrifying to try and take down.
Now that's actually a disaster for Hitbrain and for Verdant as a whole. The first tower going down in mid lane, you don't just get the increased gold, you also get easy access in towards those jungle camps. And where Winter 7 has always started to peak has been in these later on scenarios. He has a lot of gold just on camps, he has a lot of gold from that mid lane, he's a very powerful Vi, and he has easy access into Taxa's jungle. The Taxman is gonna get taxed later on in the game, and it's very difficult for his team to position. They're thankful they have an Ezreal, but the Ezreal's not going to have the impact they want. there's almost no wave clear on this champion. So unless they rotate the Victor onto every wave on mid lane, in which case they have a suboptimal map setup later on, that tier 3 could go down very fast. And that trade ultimately works out so well in Riddle's favor. And all they had to do was wait for Verdant to make the mistake.
I'll tell you what, though, I think we might be getting to the bottom of why Johan changed his name back to Winter for this series, though, okay? He knows he's going up against Taxa, the tax man, and he's changed his identity to hide his extra money, to hide his funds in an offshore account. And I mean, like, he went back there. He went back there after taking those 2 towers. He was sat on Mert Treads and a Black Cleaver. He got a full Aegis of the Legion and a Kindle Gem. You don't often see Vise in highly accelerated gold states, but this one is.
Yeah, and this is the perfect example that kills don't mean gold, right? We're 3-2, Taxa's 1-0-1. It's not the flashiest scoreline in the world, but he's got a lot of money from other sources. And with that Radiant Virtue almost ready to go, he's basically a full item ahead of Taxa. When you find that reset timing for Winter 7, he's going to be more than happy to just dive into the front line. It makes him even more difficult to take down. And I cannot emphasize enough how good this build path is for him. The Black Cleaver rush versus Cassante versus Maokai is going to have a lot of value.
Yeah, that's a huge point right there. The Black Cleaver opening path is much cheaper than the Radiant Virtue opening path and gives much better stats for the Vi champ right now. This is another aspect where Winter 7's champion pool and jungle playstyle is benefited by new patches. He plays almost all of the Black Cleaver champions, whereas Taxa has become much more of this like tank player as the seasons have gone on. The Lee Sin, the Vi, the Wukong, everything that can go Black Cleaver first is a really strong jungler right now on the current patch because of this first item spike. So he has the money, he has more efficient build path, and he has the experience on these champions, and he has the playstyle to benefit from the new changes. Winter 7, the MVP of the split, is definitely the man to be feared as the game starts to enter the Baron stage.
Verdant looking for this Drake though. Kevo's got 2 items. This AD carry can dish out damage. It's not matched by Jinjo. And Verdant, they can look to start up this dragon. It's how well can they kite it out? How well can they DPS this Drake down before that ultimate engage comes through? Banderas is ready with the Call the Forge God. Winter looking for flank angles, and so is Fire Rain.
Fly on the side, going to get charmed, going to take 20% of his HP. And I mean, hey, the good thing for Verdant is they can't lose their mid lane towers if Riddle want to rotate over there.
Come on,
They're trying to collapse onto Fire Ray, but he just about gets away. Fighting out beautifully, and Banderas engages on the front side. But in dives Nilla, assassinating Kiba as Winter 7 is going absolutely ham onto Kevo. He's not going to be able to take out the Ezreal, and Verdant, they get the fight, they get the Drake, and they get away.
Absolutely incredible. The setup from Verdant there. Taxa just throwing saplings down every now and then, stalling Riddle from getting in. Riddle, they don't get in time to contest the Drake. They get in time to find a fight, but it just doesn't work for them. Kiba's stun doesn't quite hit the marker here. You've got Fire Rain who layers up 2 with the Everfrost, and the knockup from Banderas is onto the front line. The exact 2 targets that it wants to be on if you're Verdant. They're able to go forth and try and take this fight back. And the fact that Taxa survives here, the fact that Kevo survives here, the top side of this fight is all blinking low HP bars for Verdant, but they do just enough to get out.
The Kiba double stun lands there, but the Ahri is not in a position to follow up. It's not on crucial targets, and the Victor is in full control of that choke point. Yes, you're following up on the Ornn knockups, but you're in a situation where the Victor feels completely free to do what he wants. Heavy AoE champ with heavy AoE and terrain scaling in his disengage with that W, they feel right at home moving through those entrances into neutral objectives, and that's where Riddle chose to fight. Choosing to fight there, not on. You don't have the Drake, you may as well back up and play with the advantage that you have. That one Drake doesn't matter, and you don't have to accelerate the game to get the win.
So I guess now looking at how both compositions are going to be interacting, we're post 20 minutes in, the early game has well and truly been crested. We've got a couple of items on Kevo like we saw in the previous fight. We've got a couple of items on Jinjo too. How are Riddle feeling? How are Verdant feeling, veteran, about where the game is right now?
Well, Verdant are obviously very happy that they were able to win a fight. The gold lead that they know that they don't have anymore doesn't feel so bad. But they're still cautious. They're aware that the gold lead still exists, and that Riddle need to mess up, but Riddle have messed up, and they know they just have to wait for that. Will this be another time?
Well, I think Kevo's messed up. He was stood a little bit too far forward, and Riddle just kill him for it. Nile now dashing away, popping the Gargoyle Stonepipe, but that's not going to be enough. And hey, post 20 minutes, Baron is available.
Erol doesn't have Chaos Storm either. This contest is really difficult. Taxa doesn't have Flash to get into the pit. The Super Cone been taken away as well. Taxa's going to have to walk his way through the front door to try and get into this, but Kiba, he's got stuns ready. Fire Rain's waiting as well. This feels like a death trap for Verdant.
King of Steels is approaching here, though. I've seen this situation play out before, and Kiba trying to zone, but it comes out early. 3-600. Victor is untouched, but Taxa goes down. Errol, the last guy left with no smite. Can he keep... I actually thought he did it for a second there, my god. This will be a Baron secured for Riddle. 22 minutes into the game, 7 for 3, 4k gold ahead. I'm going to have to say, Kiba did absolutely everything. The beautiful, beautiful man currently channeling a 4-year-old girl. Kevo here engaged on by the MVP of the split right there, followed up by everyone but Kiba, but I'm still going to say Kiba did everything. And it works out brilliantly for Riddle. Crucially, putting Verdant on the mental back foot because they now know Taxa can't just steal your balance for you like he was doing early on in the split to net them all of their wins. All of their game plans don't work. What they have to do now is find some other way to bring it to super late, because if this Ezreal still hits that 4-item spike, even maybe that 3-item spike against this team, thinking about it, he can still be a massive threat, and Errol is going heavy into the damage to make sure that will be the case.
And I guess that's where you have to look right now. On the side of Riddle, though, I don't feel like this composition is going to feel bad about sieging onto Verdant. Whilst they've not got the longest range AD carry, they've got so many reliable ways of just getting at you, even if you are stood under your tower, that it doesn't provide as much safety as it otherwise would.
Tier 2 turret's going to be easily taken. Oh my gosh, Fire Rain, he's so easy to get away though. Not able to be slaughtered underneath that Tier 2 turret. And they've got Call the Forge God still ready, cease and desist, if they want to try and find an engagement underneath this Tier 2 turret. I thought that was going to be, you know, fairly easy to take down, but the beautiful thing is if we go back to 10-15 minutes earlier into the game, Riddle did the hard work of turrets in the mid lane when Winter 7 was able to put down that Rift Herald and take 2 turrets pretty much freely. They happily traded that for 1 Tier 1 in the bot lane, and now they've got free access to move to those side lanes and try and take them down. Fortunately enough, though, Verdant, they put up a good defense in that top lane, and while they might have to forfeit this dragon, they're stopping this Baron push very effectively.
Showing some of that resilience that I guess they've kind of been known for throughout the split. That Nord series that they played went longer than I think anyone would have expected. So I'd be very surprised to see Verdant give up so early into Game 1, but it's definitely Riddle, the team who sat at the top of the table for the longest time throughout the split, who do have the advantage, have the slight advantage in the first game of this series.
Taxa running away from Kiba. 4-year-olds don't pay tax. Alright? Yeah, run away. Neither left on his own.
Could be in danger, but actually, hold on, it's a couple of members of Riddle who've been caught out. Kiba, very low HP, but it's actually Taxa who's been killed. A double for Jinjo as Fire Rain diving forward onto Kevo. A double knock-up. And it's 3 members of Verdant attempting to kite his way as much as they can. Nilla is going to get Fire Rain low. Is going to be able to take him out, but it's so difficult for the Cassette to play this out. He's still hitting onto Winter, but cannot take him down. Riddle with the ace.
And tries he might. Kevo just doesn't have enough. Jinjo free firing the entire time. Gale forces forward to take down Erol, who fails a flash over a wall. He finds 2 double kills in this fight, funnily enough, and it is just enough for Riddle. This is that on large engage range we were talking about. Erol gets caught by 1 knock up there, immediately gets targeted and doesn't quite find the flash. And then you get to see the follow-up, the cease and desist, the see hero, kill hero. Kevo does a great job at spacing this, kiting this one out, but Vi's also got Q every 5 seconds, can just about chase you down. And with the ghost value in the late game, Jinjo just chases everyone around the terrain. Doesn't need the insane amount of mobility because he's got the movement speed to back up the squad.
Just want to say, all of that began with Kiba just chasing down Taxa. Right, campaign for Kiba, MVP. I'm starting that campaign for Kiba with a K.
How much is he paying you?
I don't have to disclose that to you.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. You
my finances are my private business, okay?
Okay. Well, either way, the Rylai start for Kiba does make it quite easy for him to chase people down, right? Those slows are doing no end of work. Tiba's just whacking away and slowing. Throws a mallet bear, if anybody remembers that item. But Eras should be fine.
I remember frozen mallet.
Should be. I mean, if Verdant keep hitting him, then he might not be, but they're taking a long time to hit him. They've not been able to kill him. Here come the rest of Riddle, though. Here come the rest of Verdant. No fight gonna result, actually. Okay, Verdant just happy enough to beat up on that target dummy.
That right there was the power of Jack's show. Tank items are in a bit of a stupid place right now, but if you're in the fight for long enough, Jack's show will essentially absorb vampirically the HP of everyone around you and essentially act as a triumph that you don't need to get an execute for. And right there, you could see, it didn't just save his life, it basically made continuing the fight untenable, and he gets a free reset off that. His team still has an advantage, they still have a lot of disengage and CC, and they still have a lot of targets, so they're not really at risk by the Ornn being off map. And the Ornn, has the Unleashed teleport up again now? Yes, he does. So the whole map doesn't really change off of that pick, just a lot of cooldowns burned, a lot of cooldowns wasted, and a lot of angry tweets sent towards Riot Freak.
The one and only member of the Riot Balance team.
The only one.
The only one. Deservedly so, those tweets.
Yeah, I mean, how else do you explain Riot Balance unless there's only one guy doing it?
I think trying to explain Riot Balancing has been a question for generations, veteran, and it's going to take better people than me to figure it out.
You could say it's a riddle.
Ooh. That's the name of one of the teams that's playing.
Yes.
Oh,
Smart stuff.
I get it now.
Smart stuff. Baron's on the board now. Riddle were able to just about take that last one away from Verdant, and once again, Taxa is coming towards the pit without a flash. That makes the steal potential a little bit harder, but that doesn't mean that Verdant aren't going to try. The Nature's Grass opening up and Riddle attempting to disengage. Keeper's going to find a big hit onto E-Roll. Pull the Forge God opening up, getting a double knock-up. Firing on the side, preventing the Ezreal from joining the fight. And Riddle are cleaning up in the river. It's already 3 kills. Make that 4 kills. I don't think they care about the Baron. They're running up mid lane, looking for the Nexus.
It's an absolute slaughter. There's no other way of putting it, Middlecop. They just funneled in to Riddle like lambs to a slaughter, and they're going to go for Nexus turrets 1 and 2 here. There's a wave there, teleport to hold it up for longer. Jinjo's still KDA farming.
I mean, Verdant...
Ace.
Sorry, go on.
For Verdant, well, not ace for Verdant, ace onto Verdant. Riddle with
They wish.
a pretty fast-paced game by their standards. Right, guys, game 1 in under 30 minutes.
You know what this means? I take the lead. Hip Rain voted Verdant first game. Hip Rain also voted Riddle win, so I'm 1 point ahead of him no matter what happens now.
Okay, well, and
we can
Riddle,
go home now, right?
Yeah, well, it's basically the only reason why we're here. But Riddle also a point up on Verdant, and honestly, from Verdant, not quite the same composition that I was necessarily expecting from them, and Riddle able to respond well and take them down fairly swiftly, Ray.
Yeah, and unfortunately, or the thing sticking out to me is that the Riddle composition was pivoted to take down Kevo, and as soon as that that level of draft came through, Verdant had to pivot their 5th pick into a Cassante, which is a pick that we didn't see have Nilla level impact. He won the 1v1, got a couple of plates, but wasn't slamming his lane, finding solo kills and finding solo turrets like we saw from him in a previous series where Verdant have looked so successful. It really looks as though with Verdant not having the super carry be unleashed on a Fiora style champion, a Jax, a Gnar, Verdant are struggling just a little bit because they're having to rely on a little bit later scaling into the game, and they don't have that power point in the top side.
To me, so much of the game came down towards that macro trade where they traded the bot tower trying to rush for the first tower and just forgot about the Herald being on the side of Riddle. The Maokai may have been picked by Taxa, but it was the Riddle pastures that were green and verdant after those 2 towers were taken down. there was almost no recovery from that position. They had the damage. You could maybe make individual picks on them, but 5-on-5s would be a whitewash, as you can see here. One bit of point and click CC goes down. The Ari has the setup for a damage, has the setup to layer on the CC. The QE can come out from the Xayah. The stuns can come in from Kiba, MVP campaign for Kiva, and the fights will just keep going like this. Make a separation, split, skirmish, split, skirmish, split, skirmish, and you will eventually win. And with that gold lead, there's no configuration left where Verdant can actually contest.
Okay, gents, before we jump to break for game one, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What do Riddle want to be keeping the same? What do we want to see again from them in this second game? And what do Verdant have to change? We're going to have one of you answer each. Who wants to take it first?
Verdant needs to pick Carry Fanilla. That's my answer.
Okay, and then Veteran, what are we keeping for Riddle?
I mean, I think if they are going to redo draft like this, they need to make sure that compositions that layer with the utility that Fire Rain brings aren't back in the game. Fire Rain is, and this was still the same thing. Fire Rain is a utility champ. They're very good at playing together as 3, as 4, as 5. Deny them those compositions, and then you won't be in a position where you feel like you have to be playing around bot, because if you're playing around bot, you're playing Riddle's game. So ultimately, a long way around, but I agree with Rudude, you should still be playing towards Nilla on top side, but you have to deny these utility compositions from the mid and support, or you're going to feel like you have to play bot again.
Okay, well, let's see if that is how Game 2 is going to be turning out. We are going to be jumping to a very short break before we see if Verdant can pull it back, or if Riddle can send themselves to an early match point.
Kiba.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the grand finals of the NLC Spring Split. We're here after Riddle got an advantage in Game 1, an advantage in this series, currently 1-0 up. Verdant are going to need to change a lot of stuff if they're going to be able to even up this series. I think he was trying to ignore him. It's very, very rude to me.
I wasn't saying anything. Please continue. But I am now officially in the lead in the prediction list. I'm just saying.
It's most important.
Thank you.
I can't believe they brought it up.
Now this.
They know what matters. They know what matters. They know what everyone's here for. They know what the people want.
When Riddle, when Verdant 3-2 this and we end even, that's going to grate you so much.
That's
is when
fine.
this
I'm joint first. You're allowed to bask in my first place. I will get in the next race, but you won't. It's all good. I will always be first. I don't care if I have to share the limelight
Gentlemen, the matter of hand is the grand final of our ERL. I feel like the prediction discussion is something that we can maybe save for the green room. But Veteran, I do want to sort of come back to you on this because that was a very rapid game coming out from Riddle, at least by their standards. And that wasn't the same Verdant. It didn't feel like the same Verdant that we've been seeing so far in the playoffs.
That's because generally Verdants are able to be in a more even position when they get to that like 20-minute Baron position, right? They're not normally in a position where their mid lane's been completely smashed open due to one big macro mistake. But that is, in fairness, something we characterize about Riddle. They don't just win fights, they win fights in advantageous positions that normally allow them to just smash down a couple of towers and completely change the map setup and then slowly choke their opponents out. In this instance, though, yeah, it happened differently. This is something we'd normally think of as a minor macro mistake in any other kind of situation, but Riddle had the Herald, they had the tools, and it was all on the guy that recognized the position they were actually in, and he just opened up the entire map from it, and suddenly there was no safe place. Think about the first fight that happened after he smashed down those two mid towers. That fight would not have been able to extend if those two mid towers were still up. So that trade, ultimately, Riddle didn't just take it down, they knew how to push it through to the very brink. That gave them the Baron, and that gave them the game.
Perfect example of a butterfly effect in League of Legends, where the one mistake that you cost earlier cost you in the later run. And obviously heading into game number 2, Riddle, they're gonna look to probably just do the same thing. We've got side selection is the exact same. Verdant chose red side, so they're gonna have that 5th pick once again, and they're gonna have to try and alter something through the draft. I was very surprised through game number 1 where we had such high focus on the jungle bans and those bridge junglers getting taken off the board so frequently to allow for what I'm going to call, the OPs of bot lane to come through. Maybe Riddle just or maybe Verdant just throw caution to the wind with regard to those junglers. Give Winter 7 any jungler that he wants, because we saw it on the Vi this game, was still very proactive and did exactly what we've known of him to do. And if you drop those bans, you think it doesn't matter what we put him on. We've got now 2 more bans for a bot lane, 2 more bans for somewhere else that can open up a better playstyle to the top side.
It doesn't matter what the shoe that he's kicking me with looks like. It matters that he's wearing a shoe at the end of the day. So maybe we could try and get an advantage. That's such a weird analogy. I don't know if I've ever heard that anywhere else.
It fits.
I mean, I like it. I especially like it if you want to talk about someone who's very impactful this game, Winter 7, right? Because this guy is wearing a very similar shoe on all his champions, but they all buffed right now. Not just the playstyle, but they all rush Black Cleaver, and that's very good here. And you got 1 ban towards his champ pool in the previous round. Maybe you're going to see those increase if you get the Lee down, the Wukong down, the Vi down, the Viego down, whatever you can imagine that can build Black Cleaver down. Maybe you don't give this guy something he's comfortable on, because as we all know, maybe it's a slow starter for them, but once he feels like his champion is spiking, which is much earlier in the game now than it ever was on the previous patch, my God, does he push that advantage through. Phenomenal fights again from him in these skirmish scenarios. The Lee's down immediately. Let's see if the Vi gets added to the pool. Campaign for Kiba right here immediately. That Annie is shifted straight into the Verdant bans. They understand where the real power is. They understand the real king on the Rift, and it is Kiba.
He definitely had a strong performance in game 1, and I'm also intrigued to see how Verdant switch up the bot lane a bit more generally, because Kevo's Ezreal got kind of focused down in the draft. It was kind of anticipated coming out of Riddle, and they built their composition to deal with it fairly substantially. We are seeing the Xayah ban, so Jinjo's not going to be able to pilot that one this time around, but Winter 7 looked pretty damn good on the Vi last time, Rudu. I think he's going to look pretty damn good again.
Yeah, I love this. Verdant have dropped a jungle ban in the Wukong and maybe something else as well to try and make this, fully fledged out as a as a jungle pairing. It was the Viego ban, right, that they also put in. So it's 2 jungle bans dropped, and Riddle have just gone, you could have kept banning them. It didn't matter. We needed this Vi. It's the route to our successes. And they've put tax on something much more, I'll say, proactive than it can be through the early stages. It's much easier to find solo picks on this Sejuani and get the ball rolling.
They are disrupting what we were talking about before, though, right? The synergy between support and mid is a very underrated aspect. You have to think about jungle, mid, and support as this one big group that we like to call mid-section, and by removing the Annie, that point-and-click CC is down. But you can still see the makings of a point-and-click CC comp by going the Vi first. The Sivir makes me think of more front-to-back, but that can go with so much utility in that bot lane. There's still options like the Rakan that they took away before because they know how impactful Kiba can and has been on that early on in the split. This is a composition designed to rush down and chase, and it's going into a very low mobility Varus. Does he have disengage? Yes, but he only has one of those, and if you burn that, it's so difficult now for him to play into that Riddle composition.
It's also just a good matchup in isolation between the 2 AD carries, right? Spell Shield versus Chain of Corruption. You're not going to get picked. But Verdant, they've thrown that gauntlet down. They recognize, okay, how do we win our games? It's through Nile stomping top lane. They blind pick Jax for the top side. They've got 2 bans now to get rid of difficult matchups. The Malphite's number 1. Sion could very well be number 2 to just get rid of those tanks and make sure that Banderas has a difficult time.
And I mean, we saw from that last game, Nilla was consistently getting pressure against Banderas. And right, he was on that Cassante, which does do fairly well into the on, but he wasn't really able to take that lead and properly translate it into team fights that made the rest of the game work for Verdant. So I love this sort of return to the Nilla carried top style. And I also love that they're banning out a few of these picks that can deal with the Jax, like the Malphite, but also this Ahri, which was so good for Fire Rain last time out.
You get to see as well, like that instant midsection 3 versus 3. The layering of CC is going to have to be something a little bit different. Talia is still open, pairs nicely with point and click if they want to go for something that also offers map movements as well. So with Verdant having this now, bot lane needed to be rounded out. I expect to see that go there, but it does mean Ero's going to have counter pick for 5 mid lane.
But what's up? The thing that they banned last time instead of the Ahri, the Aurelion Soul is up, and you've picked a Jax. It's very difficult to play that if you have a champion like that that can lean towards those side lanes. Galio is up as well, though blinding it here would be a bit weird, but you do have a lot of point and click options other than the Ahri. There's the Aurelion Soul. They seem to have forgotten about that. The Ahri got in their heads and she snowballed in the second skirmish last game off of the back of that Vi play and off of the back of that Annie play. But there are so many things Fire Rain can follow up with. They know that pool, but they temporarily forgot it. You've kind of got a split set of bans here, where you did the Malphite ban to try to buffer the Jax, and you did the Ahri ban to try to negate the compositions Riddle are comfortable with, but by not committing to either, Riddle are now able to be in a position where they can find something comfortable in towards the Jax setup and in towards the Aurelion Soul setup. The Ornn, it should be mentioned, half roams in towards River can be used to control on side lane with that very, very long range R. The Galio's something we just talked about, so now I'm wondering about the stream delay. And that would be something that you could pair with the Jax, but it's going to be Errol on his Azir. We talked about it. He's being a monster on it. Fury even got the hardest counter possible into it, and Fury played that game really well and still lost to the Errol Azir. It's almost like the humanoid Azir of the NLC. It's a champion that made Errol a force to be reckoned with highlight plays, also some not so highlight plays, and it's comfort all the way through for Verdant.
It is his most played through the regular season, and probably through playoffs as well. He has had a few Cassiopeia games, but as we can see, that is getting banned away from him in the draft. The Azir versus ASOL matchup expected to be fairly, we'll say trade-oriented in terms of you're just trading CS with one another. The Singularity and those soldiers have about an equal range, so it becomes a little difficult to try and go for those prolonged engagements versus one another. But Verdant have got triple carry with double frontline. This is stock standard team fight front to back as best as possible if they're going for those 5v5s, with the added pressure of Nilla potentially going to a side lane. The Jax Sejuani 2 versus 2 is also going to go crazy this game, stacking up that Sedge passive very soon.
But I think one of the good things for Verdant actually here in the context of how these two compositions are going to work against each other is it's not just all on Kevo to be your big damage source. So even if we see Winter 7 on the Vi, we see Banderas on the diving backline and completely CCing that AD carry into oblivion, you've still got this Jax, still got this Azir who have a little bit more mobility to them, a little bit more about them and can carry those fights just the same. Once
again though, I feel quite bad for this guy, but they're just not going to give Banderas a nice matchup on top lane. They're like, no mate, you're on Ornn duty. We're going to rely on you to control, to set up for us while we farm the MVP's campaign for Kiba. You're going to be stuck on a bad Ornn matchup again, but we trust you to at least be useful later on. Again, not a little bit better than last time. At least he can do something to Jax in certain scenarios, but overall, still a very difficult matchup, especially when you take into account Jax's very aggressive dash forward, 8-second cooldown, and Banderas' Ornn dash backwards, 14-second cooldown. You're always going to be able to play around that cooldown gap as the Jax and just get winning trades. You pretty much have to seed the lane again topside, and Verdant, they're going to be looking to play heavily through that.
Expect to be able to find push as well for Erol in that mid lane. The Soldier's just going to do a bit of a better job. I know Asol's E is potentially actually a decent enough answer for the Azir, so if Erol can find push, that 3-man dive on the top side can look good. Already Nilla looking for at least vision in the top side jungle to at least attempt to spot out Winter 7. And yeah, you get to see already this early trading, not just between the champions, but between the waves more so than anything else.
Yeah, and I do like that we are seeing Erol on his Azir for this second game, because there's nothing worse than being 0-1 down in this series and then feeling uncomfortable going into that second game, which is so important. He's going to be able to play out this matchup absolutely fine because he's done it a million times before.
Least aggressive Jax player level 1 right there, rolling straight through the minion wave with the E, knows that the Ornn has to move towards the other side him, gets a really aggressive slow push happening on towards the top side and a winning trade on with the grasp. Every time that grasp is up, Nyla's going to be looking to trade with his Q. He knows that there's only so much that Ornn can do against that. He can always look to play around the cooldowns and even bait it out. It's very difficult for the Ornn here. He has to play around that E. He has to try to play through walls to maybe try to go for the knockup if the E is down. But otherwise, Nyla should feel very comfortable here. The question is, can we win this bot lane on the side of Verdant so hard that Clyde gets favorable resets where he can move top and try to translate these into dives, into kills, into aggressive 3v2s, into plays like that where they'll be able to snowball the Jax. Because if they get that Jax snowballing, Riddle are going to spend the rest of the game trying to answer him, and that can give you the windows to make the kind of map movements Riddle made against you in the previous game.
And the expectation is that Klaus should be able to find those windows in this bot matchup. Leona, a typical answer to the Rakan. If he dives in, you insta-CC him and take him down. Varus, a very powerful laner in a 2 versus 2 as an AD carry in his own right. So Clive finding this reset time, you can already see is walking out toward this top lane, potentially looking for a 3-man, 4-man maybe dive if they can find Erol there as well. But recognizing that Nilla is the carry, that Kevo is going to have to be resided to his bot lane fairly isolated for the early stages of this game, and it does put him under a little bit of pressure, but it doesn't matter if they're finding this Jax leads.
I think that is the sort of the rough element of gameplay on Verdant is like, for Kevo, this is kind of the best thing that he can do for his team, and that CS deficit that he's already fallen down to is probably going to grow as this lane goes on. Banderas has got the wave pushing towards Nilla, but Taxa has gone over the wall onto the Ornn Storm, going to come through. Unstoppable, actually, from Banderas. Keeps them alive a little bit longer, but it is not enough to take down Nilla.
I wouldn't say that Clay had a particularly big part of that. He just kind of showed up and tanked a turret shot, but he was there for the party all the same. Taxa there, 2 versus 1, takes him down.
Oh no, Kevo. Teleport's going to come in, actually. Verdant trying to defend that AD carry, and Kiba gets his knock-up flash away from... Okay, so Verdant get first blood on the top side, and they keep their AD carry alive.
Loads of interesting things happen there, though. For one, Kevo can't stay under this tower for very long. He's still very low HP, but the Errol TP there loses him level 6 on mid lane there. Look how hard the pressure is done. Yes, Clyde did not have a big part in the top lane play itself, but by showing there, he allowed Riddle to make that play on bot, burn all summoners from Kevo, put him in a position where he's going to lose minions anyway, and they managed to secure advantage in mid lane through it. Yes, I will absorb some XP on bot lane, but it was all shared with Kevo. That's going to be level 6 advantages on both mid and bot lane, all because Clyde decided to show on the play that he had basically no impact on. Yes, Verdant are winning topside, but the rest of the map is in Riddle's hands, and they have to feel very confident about that. Look at the CS gap on bot lane now that's opened up from it.
It's a good old split map, chaps. We got a top side power point for Verdant, we got a bot side power point for Riddle, and that extends into the mid lane as well, as you'd highlighted. You're all TPing in, splits XP with Kevo, means that he's further behind firing than he might have liked. They do get to hard push this wave with the dematerializer, so it's going to be at least reset for when Erol decides to return to this lane. But it's really powerful, this Aurelion Soul in the game right now, because he's been given this free time in the mid lane.
Also here, you have Sivir collecting solo XP in the bot lane, while Cly and Kevo continue to share in towards the mid lane there. Kevo's shared XP on 2 rotations now with Azir on the bot lane, and with Cly in towards the mid lane. Keeper zoning them off here as well, so Sivir opting to slow push for another wave on bot. The most aggressive one they can do. Winter 7 has to be willing to peel off. But if they know Sejuani is on the top side here, then Kevo's getting denied so much. Look at the level advantages that are opening up off of this top side play. They played very heavily for the Jacks, but in doing so, they've essentially given up everywhere else.
And this feels like what Riddle do, right? They get presented with a scenario by their opponents, and they're able to adapt on the fly so rapidly, whilst they may be down in terms of gold, right? They've got that early dragon. They've got a massive advantage in this bot lane for Jinjo, and they're feeling very good about how this game's going.
For sure, but someone else who feels very good is Nyla. While you were talking about that, just taking the Demolish proc on the tower, taking the play in front of the Ornn, and then half HPing the Ornn in one trade with no HP lost. He's feeling very powerful, and he is the point of hope for Verdant.
Ooh, they might be looking for some hope in the bottom lane. I think Winter wisely backing away as Erol had rotated over, but 4 members of Riddle still want to go forward for this blue buff. There's no real objective that we're playing for, but Clyde will go in all the same. Kiba getting a knock up as Taxa is stunned on the front line. Winter taken so low and falls to the ignite. A double Emperor's Divide from Erol will get even more for Verdant. 3 kills in the bottom side river.
It's just too early in the game. Fire Rain was untouched that entire fight. Sky's Descent comes down. He has absolutely free reign in that team fight. Just doesn't do enough damage, unfortunately. Kevo free hitting from over this wall. Erol comes in and does out enough damage as well. And it is Riddle without that early items that they're looking for, overextending into the enemy jungle, losing summoner spells and losing lives.
Riddle in a terrible position of itemization, but also that split MVP, Winter 7 in a terrible position as Vi. She's not able to isolate anyone there. She's not got any follow-up there whatsoever. She didn't even land a punch during her escape. She was just 100-0. May as well not have been them, was just free gifting gold to them. That whole contest, too aggressive by Riddle, like you say, far
Kevo's
too
in trouble.
early.
Oh, this is dirty. Oh, they've seen Cly roaming.
He's just going to die, yeah.
He doesn't have flash. He doesn't have a hope in hell. Riddle returned to the scene of the crime, and this time they get off scot-free.
And there's just nothing on the flip side. This Herald is, I guess, a compensation package for Verdant. They're not going to find anything with Cly's roam, and it means that Kevo misses out on yet more experience, more CS. You can see, despite the fact that he found those kills, the gold is probably dead even between Jinjo and he actually might even be in Sivir's favor with those couple of plates going down.
If we look in terms of total gold and total XP, yes, Riddle just about come on top. They're going to get the 2 plates on bot, they get the kill on Varus, and they get the XP and the XP denial from the minions. But Herald play is not a bad thing for Verdant when your entire composition is based around one lane doing really well, which is the Jax lane. You sacrifice a little bit on the Sedge and on the rest of the map overall, but you're going to translate this into more plates for Jax that he otherwise wouldn't get, and that's the one guy that you really need to open up the window for everyone else. So whereas this trade may be uneven, in total, this could work out better for Verdant overall, depending on how they use that Herald in relation to Jax.
Another question is we need to see them to use that Herald, right? Let's make it a positive play for the Jax. He's running toward that Divine Sunderer very early on, skipped any form of boots for it, and has been taking plates fairly freely in that top lane matchup. Going to go for a reset now. I expect to complete that Mythic, which is at the minute going up against just plated steel caps for Banderas. That is a 1v1, which is very decidedly Jax favoured. And with the Herald, with Taxa making his way out toward, well, what is right now the bot lane, it might not be the be-all and end-all that Verdant were hoping for just yet.
But this game is going substantially better than the first game, right? And the key difference is Nilla has got a lead on a champion he is actually going to be able to carry on. We've seen it a couple of times from him throughout the split already, and we know that when Verdant put their resources in this guy, more often than not, it turns out pretty well for them.
There's another Drake spawning in about 50 seconds time, Hextech, I believe. And if Verdant want to try and find a fight, I wouldn't mind them bringing Nilla down for this. I wouldn't mind them, using the Jax Mythic Spike to secure themselves this dragon. It really depends how Verdant want to play this one out.
Counterpoint though, if they drag Nilla down, it's still the scenario where plates are up on all of the towers. I think you'd rather force Riddle in the position where they feel like they have to be contesting this, and if Riddle go for that bait, you let the Jax get solo XP, you let the Jax get solo plates, you let the Jax extend his lead. Hell, you may even be willing to just give Riddle that Drake, drop the Herald topside, and make a huge play to snowball the Jax as far as possible. All of that would be better off than going into a teamfight scenario against the composition, let's be on the side of Riddle, that is much more built for teamfighting than yours.
Oh,
Yeah,
Scoop.
at the moment it is. Fire Rain.
What? That is so much patience from Fire Rain. He's trying to... Hero goes in there to try and bait the flash. Doesn't even use Emperor's Divide. Okay.
Oh, no.
That's not communicated right.
Yeah, a little bit of a whoopsie, a little bit of a misplay, but once again, Verdant sort of grouping up with multiple members to try and get a shove on Nilla.
Okay.
Okay. Very, very low. Still alive, though.
Yeah.
I do not like
Someone who
that.
might not be alive for very much longer is Kevo. As whilst Verdant's play in the mid lane fumbles, Riddle's in the bot side jungle goes fantastically.
Verdant's play, though, in that mid lane, they do get the plates onto the Jax, but they share it among 3 people. The Ornn, instead, is the one getting the solo XP on towards the top side, and is now able to group. And Riddle, overall, are the ones able to get the neutral objective. So you do somewhat meet the scenario you want. You wanted to get plates onto the Jax, but I feel like you could have gotten so much more if you tried to do it on top side. But maybe they remember the last game where an extended side lane play ended up giving Riddle a massive lead in that midsection, and they're worried about repeating that. You have to bear in mind that if you do lose that midsection, and this is the skill issue when it comes to playing these split map compositions, it's much harder to play to your side lane Jax. So they try to get both at the same time, and overall I think they can say they succeed in getting a lot on towards their Jax, but you can't help but feel Verdant could have gotten more.
Keeper just shadowing up toward that top side to make sure that Keeper's not all that Nilly isn't going for too many plates that he doesn't have right to go for. And of course, with that Herald play into the mid lane, it does open up Verdant, if they can find purchase into the second Herald, essentially a free tier 1 turret. They just have to place that Herald down, get it to charge, and the turret falls. It gives them more agency into the map than they ever had in game number 1. And it will help them for those future Drake setups that they're going to need to go to. The consequence of their play in the mid lane, consequence of giving Nilla gold, as we'd sort of suggested it might be, is that Riddle now have this second Drake, and they're looking toward a very early soul if they can find it.
Have found themselves in that position. Fire Rain, once again, being jumped onto a mid lane, but just able to skate his way out of there. And that's the second time that Tax's tried to make a play happen, and Riddle have responded with one of their own and made it work a little bit better.
If I'm Kevo, I'm just banning Vi next game. I don't care what the coach says. This Vi needs to be removed, right? He's having zero fun in any of these games. Every time, Ezreal, Varus just focusing down.
I agree, ban the Vi. Ignore the Rakan, ban the Vi. Campaign for Kiba. Get me that 3-0 prediction, boys. Let's go. I think Kiba's engages here on bot lane have been very good. Yes, we've lost a little bit of synergy when it comes to mid support, but the jungle support synergy has been on point. Yes, Nyla's being played through by Verdant, but they are nowhere near as efficient playing around top as Riddle are about playing around bot. They've opened that tower on bot side. They got as many plates on Jinjo as possible, more plates than Verdant were able to get on towards their Jax, and now Riddle are in a position where they have heavy tempo in the game and are initiating the swap top side.
And this works perfectly for them because it denies Banderas the bad lane. It denies Nile plates as well. They've fallen off anyway, but it makes sure that this Jax isn't able to continue finding advantages in an isolated lane. Kevo is behind the play now because he either has to go up to the top side and match the Sivir so that his Jax has a winning lane, or Nile has to go into the top side and try and battle up in a 1 versus X scenario. Herald has already spawned. Doesn't look like Riddle are particularly challenged for it. They're going to be able to take this one uncontested, and they're just going to be able to move on through with that objective.
And it has just felt like the story of this game has been Riddle investing resources on the parts of the map that just end up going a little bit better for them, right? Like every time Verdant were trying to make a play into the mid lane, they do something bot lane and it would go a little bit better. Now Verdant was stacking multiple members in the bot side because Riddle were just going top lane, taking that Rift Herald, taking that tower. It's trading that's being initiated by Verdant, but Riddle still being favored. Banderas popping the barrier there and is being CC'd to high heaven, but not taking too much damage. Now Fire Rain may look to turn it around.
But this is kind of endemic of every Verdant play. Yes, they're playing against Riddle's top lane, but they're not playing for Jax here. They're not even playing for a carry there. Even if that play works out, you trade a kill on a tank for a death on a tank, and the rest of the map gets to play out their state as is. Verdant have a vague idea of how they want to play, but Riddle are like, alright, let's go bot, we killed him once, alright, let's come bot, kill him again, alright, come bot, kill him again. Very, very definitive decision making on the side of Riddle, and that's what's breaking all this. Verdant kind of split all over the place, a vague idea, but Riddle on the other hand, I need to do this now, I need to do this now, I'm going to do this again, and it becomes very, very brutal, the efficiency with which they make these plays.
It's certainty versus apathy between these two teams. Riddle are, as you mentioned, making those aggressive plays and knowing exactly what they need to do. Verdant have been really not in the same page as one another and knowing where they want to go or making necessarily the correct play. We've got a Drake spawning in about 30 seconds time, and this is going to be another one of those situations where Verdant have a decision to make. Do they want to try and take a fight around this neutral objective, or do they want to try and funnel gold in to Nilla in a side lane? But the issue is we've reached such a point where Fire Rain can probably deal with Nilla if he just wants to wave clear it up and get back out to safety. And if there's this grouping happening between the 5v5, Nilla's going to struggle because he has to get through an Ornn, get through a Rakan, and all of the disengage that they're going to offer to the backline.
It does appear that Verdant are going to be starting up the Chemtech Drake. They're doing a fair bit of damage to it, actually, as Riddle are moving in. Ult over the wall onto Winter7 to try and stop him getting into the pits. And the steal will be denied. And the fight looks pretty decent for Verdant as well. Banderas in that Zhonya splashes away to get outside of it. But it's 2 kills in favor of Verdant. It's a double stun. It's a double knockback. Hold the phone. Verdant have just got 4 kills.
I don't know how they do it. Every single time they find a fight in a game that they don't really have any reason to be winning, but Verdant just out-execute. Winter doesn't really get any access to any of the crucial targets, goes in to try and steal away, but uses his cease and desist to get into the pit in the first place.
The big thing here is that all of the dive elements of Riddle go in, but they go in a position where neither Fire Rain nor Jinjo can follow up. They are left alone. Verdant deal with the double divers and then have the ability to re-engage. Verdant are essentially placed as a 5-man unit purely by Riddle's actions. That's almost the story of the whole series. One set gets too impatient and the other guy capitalizes on it. There's just no need to go for that double dive that was working for you so well on the bot lane in the 3v1 skirmishes, when right now all you have to do is maintain this juggernaut front line in front of Jinjo, maintain this juggernaut front line in front of Fire Rain, and they will eventually win you the fight. These dives, they're not necessary, and they will lose you the game because the re-engage from Verdant, it does exist. It shouldn't, but it will if you enable it to.
And a big beneficiary of that previous fight was Kevo. He was down pretty far in this game and really not been enjoying it. Still at a 60 CS deficit to Ginger, but all that matters is what's in your inventory, and I'm seeing a 2-item Sivir and a 2-item Varus across the board from it.
Just been piled on the entire early game. 3 deaths on his side. He's only 500 gold down versus his counterpart.
Oh, he's not having fun once again, but the Chain of Corruption is buying him a decent bit of time. A 4th death
How's
for
the
Kevo.
collapse?
And it doesn't look like Verdant are going to be able to get anything off of it. It's a double for
God.
Jinjo, and just like that, Riddle take the game right back.
Keep MVP.
They just funnel themselves in one by one, Verdant. A really bad miscommunication and not unable to protect Kevo. Ultimately, 3 people total go down. Riddle, though, credit where it's due. They spot a lapse in Verdant's timers and they find the collapse underneath the tier 1 turret.
It's just really interesting, the tendencies that make Riddle so strong in these pick-based opportunities, which both of their compositions have been based around, are the same tendencies that are making them really bad in these front-to-back scenarios. Right there, they just convey about Verdant in. Kevo is left alone again, so they engage on Kevo. Cly tries to save, so they all collapse on Cly. And then Nyla, they all collapse on him. Not entirely sure what happened here. I assume Firing was trying to recall, because there's no way he thought he could do a flank scenario here.
This is big, though. Baron could very well go to Verdant. They at the very least get to start it up. Firing won't have teleport for when he respawns, so he's going to have to go a long way to this pit. Nilla still has the ulti.
Ooh.
All of the Forge God's not available for Banderas, but we are seeing the turn. Cly on the backline, he's walked into the enemy jungle, but he's got knocked into the sky! Jinjo cleaning up with the Sivir, a triple kill from the man down under as he puts Nile under for a pentakill!
No way, Riddle just destroyed Verdant in their own jungle. 5 people fall, and now they get to take the Baron.
The only thing one can say at a Jinjo Penta is Kiba MVP campaign for Kiba. But all of Verdant there, engaging in a choke point. Oh, he's alive. He's kind. He's got this. He's got this. He's chilling. He's chilling. He's chilling. All of Verdant, though, they have a really good scenario. They do have control over those chokeholds, but they go too deep. They don't get to control Jinjo. Jinjo is untouched. All the cooldowns are burned elsewhere, and Jinjo's able to clean up the fight completely safe from that back line. Riddle get their optimal 5-man composition going because of Verdant again. You see here, they engage on towards Banderas, the tank, but look where Jinjo is. He's completely untouched. They have to go through the choke point, through the Sivir Qs, through the Sivir W, group up for the W bounce to go as far as possible. None of them are able to get onto him, and it's the easiest thing in the world. It's just a Sivir comp at the end of the day, guys, and that's why they used to say that phrase over and over again. But I just want us to get to the point in the game where it doesn't feel like one team is enabling the other or forcing the other even to play in their optimal way.
We've seen in Season 12 and Season 13 certified Zeri moments start to pop up. That was an old school Sivir moment. You clump into a chunk, you forget that the champion exists, and she just shreds you.
Wait, hold on, we've all died. What just killed us there?
Firing wasn't there. Where was the ult? That didn't kill us. No. Oh, checks damage. It was all Sivir.
That's the subtlety that Jinjo can bring to team fights on this pick, and that's why you need to shift your focus. Oh, we're back over here again. You need to shift your focus onto this Sivir, because 8 kills now of that pentakill. 3 items. Stopwatch 2. I think Jinjo is going to be quite difficult to deal with.
If anything is that I attribute to Sivir, subtlety is not one of those attributes, all right? That champion demolishes when the bounces come off, when the crit comes in on the build, and especially with this new Navori Quick Blade, that W is perma up, those Qs are perma up. In a chokehold like that, she's basically an AoE champion. That's always been the brutality of Sivir. She's a caster champion masquerading as an auto-attack based champion, and if you give her those strong points, she'll massacre you. And now she's steamrolling ahead. And Riddle, they have their big win con steamrolling in a way that the Jax on the side of Verdant just isn't.
Cly, we got Nile on the side. Verdant looking for a little bit of collapse, but spoiler alert, you can't collapse onto 5 people at the same time. Now the rest of his squad on the run. Fire rain coming down, raining fire, dropping some stars.
One by one.
On his opponents, a legendary kill for Jinjo, and it does feel like Riddle have probably got their teeth into this game.
Yeah, and there's a lot of atrocious things about this ASOL rework. It's a very powerful champion, but for me, the worst part is that they've had to redefine space gliding for now Aurelion solely in itself. This is just chasing people down across the rift being made so much easier.
Would you say that he's star walking?
Ooh, only around worlds.
Yeah, well, it's not really a world song, is it?
Oh.
Wait, was that a world song?
Hold on. Hold on. We're getting controversial on the NLC broadcast. Oh no.
Oh, it couldn't be us. It couldn't be us. What isn't controversial is the fact that Riddle are in a strong position, a very, very good position for themselves.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
Quick! Run back
We
to
got
A
base!
little bit. Okay. I'm not sure any of that was necessary, but they had no real vision on the side except to know that Varus and Leona were moving in. If they were any closer, definitely they could be engaged on, and they were a reset behind, so the gold advantage didn't necessarily matter. So I can somewhat understand the, idiot-proof method of just getting away that they opted to utilize there. Their cooldowns are very low. They will be up. We're already halfway through the Severe one. We're already halfway I'm pretty sure actually Kiba's item that has a higher cooldown.
Oh, it doesn't matter. We're getting another fight anyway. Big three-person knock-up, catching out members of Verdant, isolated across the rift, and that teamwork is really starting to fall apart at the seams now.
They may be called Verdant, but they are meeting the Industrial Revolution here and conveyor belting straight in towards Riddle over and over again, one after the other. Riddle, with these pick compositions, is abusing these tiny mispositions that essentially stretch Verdant's compositions out and have all of the mobility they need to follow through onto the next guy, onto the next guy. If Verdant don't find a Spartan-like formation, they're going to keep falling this way, but that isn't what their composition wants to do. Their composition does want to split. They want Jax isolated on the side lane. They want to move through in a thin way through the jungle. But Riddle, they have such good control of the game that they can go in and break that formation at any point, and they've been doing so well. It's almost a question at this point of when they're going to end the game rather than if.
Verdant still going for it. This might be their Thermopylae, and they will die. Jinjo on targeted on the backside, able to free hit on the Sivir. Finally, Cly catches on top of him, but by the time the Leona finds the engage, the rest of her team is wiped out of existence. Fire Rain with a triple kill, and Riddle looking to close up game 2.
It's just a wallet check at this point, and this time round I'll onboard the Kiba veteran hype train because he just demolished them in that backline. The charm on all 5 members just... There was nothing that Verdant could do. Kevo had flash, had ghost, could not position well enough to get away from Kiba. The ace comes through, and yeah, Riddle 2-0.
Nexus towers are just a formality, and 3 minutes faster than game 1. Riddle will take out the Nexus, will take match point in the NLC finals.
Bring me the last one, boys. Bring me that last game. Secure me the isolated first place. All right, let's go. One more. And definitely, I assume we're going to see the Aurelion Soul back in the ban phase, because especially in that final fight, they were seeing stars from those Fire Rain engages. The Ari went down, the Aurelion Soul went down the first one, but if you ban those, he still has the Lissandra. It's this free man, the jungle support mid, that mid section that controls the game. And look how well Jinjo's playing when he has that level of control with him. Okay, this fight being the one time where you're not actually going to see that. Obviously here you can see it breaking because that free man isn't able to play. Fire Rain so far behind the rest of them there. And they got a huge advantage. And at this point, we're thinking, okay, could be a long series, could be a 3-1. Maybe Rudu could actually catch up to me, is something probably I was only thinking, but it's the most important thing here. But then afterwards, fight after fight after fight, you would see Riddle claw it back, because if Riddle didn't give Verdant their optimal situation, then Verdant were constantly giving Riddle theirs, because stylistically, their composition, it shouldn't be permanently protecting Kevo here. It should be protecting Nyla, but Nyla's on a reset and Kevo is extended on a mid tower that Riddle absolutely want and need to be taking to compete with Nyla, and then Nyla keeps forgetting he's on a split pusher and not a team fighting champion. That's always what happens in the ERLs when you see these split push comps. Unless you're old Vitality, they always end up in team fight position, and right here you see why it's just a Civic comp. Why Riddle have the better team fight comp, because if you're not isolating them one by one like they did in the initial 2 skirmishes, it's just going to go bad for you in the long run. The Sivir AoE, all of the chain CCs, all of the crowd control coming out from Riddle, it sets up that Sivir, and it set up Riddle for a strong victory.
Yeah, and honestly, this final has been very, very strange for us, because going into these, into a lot of these playoffs games involving Verdant, we thought we knew what to expect. We thought against Ruddy that they'd just be brushed aside, taken down easily. No, they get the 3-0 there. We thought against Nord, okay, they might be able to bring it close, but they're actually able to pull out the win in that series. This time around in the final, where it's for absolutely everything, there's no second chances, and we thought that Verdant could come into this and contest Riddle. Riddle have just shown another level of League of Legends.
The power of prep, I suppose, as well, to a certain extent, because Riddle, it's easy to remember, haven't played for 2 weeks, but also have 2 extra weeks of game tape on Verdant to watch and to look at and go, we know what these guys are going to do, let's try and build strategies against it. Those mechanisms have clearly been in place and they're clearly working.
Yeah, and well, it presents the situation before us as it stands. Game 3 coming up after the break. If Verdant win this, they keep their hopes of a title alive. But if Riddle are able to get the dub, they will close out this series with a 3-0 and claim the NLC title. You do not want to go anywhere. We'll be right back in a couple minutes. Hello there, everybody. We are back
For the final game.
No, veteran. No.
For the final game, boys.
Not for what? Maybe, potentially the final game between Riddle and Verdant. Gents, it has been a rapid start to this series for Green Team number 1. That's Riddle. Green Team number 2, Verdant, they've kind of dropped the ball a little bit, and they need to win this next game if they're going to stand any hope of taking back this series and being crowned the NLC champion.
Just for my own sake of reference, Riddle, Green Team number 1 is whoever wins the games, right?
As it stands, yes.
Oh, okay. Is that subject to change? Variable.
Oh, that'd be a bit too confusing.
There's like light green and there's like deep green, you know, and like deep green is Verdant and Riddle are kind of like this lightish green, you know.
If we go down this road, Middlecott's about to start whipping out hex codes, and then we're all going to be in trouble because that means absolutely nothing to me. So, like,
you're not a team, you're a number.
Yeah.
It's actually my special skill. I can actually name the hex codes for just all of the colours.
Oh.
All of them. All of them. I just got.
I'm going to blindly believe you and not challenge you on that. That seems like the best way forward.
Well, right. So, only one colour really matters in terms of the champion select, and it's what side you're going to be on. Verdant, once again, going to be on the red side. It's the third game this series, third time they've selected red side, or third time they've ended it up on red side. And considering the first 2 games didn't go too well for them, Veteran, is this a little bit risky?
I mean, I have to say, you're the team that's going to need to adapt, but they seem to feel really comfortable on the red side anyway. They're not switching anything up, so we have to go back to the bans again and see how that's going to change up this time round.
I do think that through game number 2 versus game number 1, it looked a lot better. The identity of Verdant shone through a lot more. There were just a couple of missteps once again in that mid game where the lead that they were trying to build wasn't extended as much as we would have liked. We hit on it in the game that they had an option to have either given a second Drake and just funnel plates into Nille with the Herald and really accelerate the Jax. They chose not to do it and split the plates among 3 people. If we see a rehash of how they get to that position and then try and play out that mid game from a different stance, it gives them a better lead, better timing going into that mid game and to the late game where they ultimately got pummeled because they didn't have a lead on the Jax that was going to carry them through.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of games where Nille has got himself in very, very good positions, and it has felt like maybe not the reason that they're losing these games is the lack of resources that Verdant are putting towards him, but it doesn't really feel like he's been elevated as a potential win condition as much as he could have been throughout this series.
I definitely feel like Verdant are just less efficient about playing through their setups than Riddle are. And I'm not even sure if efficiency is the right word for it. I feel like Riddle are just kind of brutal in their current setups, right? They're like, okay, Banderas, we're just going to leave you there. Oh, you're 20 CS down? Yeah, like, cry back when you're 50 CS down, right? And then they just go bot lane and ram it through Kevo, ram it through again, even though the Ornn is on top side, and they just don't care. They'll keep pushing this through Jinjo. And again, that's something Jinjo's brought to every team he's had, with varying degrees of success. But this time round, he has a mid section that plays pretty well as a unit, especially when it comes to that support jungle part, and it's working out really, really well for him. So well, in fact, that they're just going to bypass the draft phase entirely.
Oh, we do not need to perceive. We do not need to perceive.
I do want to emphasize again that this isn't just an NLC championship as much as that is like the reason they're here. This is also a spot in the main stage of EMEA Masters versus having to go into the play-in stage. Of course, NLC with the 2 seeds, you get 1 in each. If you win this championship, you get straight into the main stage of EMEA. You're guaranteed to play the group stage where the loser of this series does have to go through play-ins.
Yeah, and then you can sort of contrast the expectations of these 2 orgs coming into the split. I think Riddle, definitely an organisation that would have seen EMEA Masters as a sort of minimum for them, and congratulations, you've at least got a playing spot. But for Verdant, this is an org that when they joined Div 2 at the start of last year, they were like, we want to get the promotion up to Div 1 to 2023. The path has been a little bit more interesting for them than they would have liked, but hey, they've made it here, they've put up a roster, and they're in a final, which I don't think that Sammy and the boys were really anticipating.
Lee is up. So the Lee ban has been removed, the Annie ban's being removed, and we see Ornn and Vi added. The Ornn ban indicates that Verdant have learned a lesson, but that isn't exactly why they were unable to play aggressively through towards top side. There were plays that they made there that simply gave Riddle too many advantages on towards bot side, and then they just didn't have the brutality that Riddle did when it came to abandoning one side for the other. Any Black Cleaver champion is something that Winter's going to feel comfortable on. He's on that Wukong. It doesn't change their playstyle at all. Verdant need a playstyle change through towards top side. Kevo, Cly, they need to just let go and accept some kind of CS deficit and find champions where they'll be useful later on anyway. But it looks like maybe they'll try to take away the Annie, which puts more threat on bot side. And that doesn't necessarily play towards the conditions that you'd think they would, given that the Ornn is down.
Doesn't mean they can play toward the top side. You addressed it in game number one, that they can put this Annie in the mid lane if they want as well. They can move all around the map with this Annie, play a more push and roam style. It's not something that we've seen from him work particularly well, but it is something that you have to may just have to adapt to.
Yes! Okay, sorry, continue.
Do you want to elaborate? That seems very...
You're quite keen to chime in there.
I am of the opinion that Jinx is one of the most broken champions in the game right now. The biggest risk in picking Jinx and picking Jinx setups is the Malphite on the enemy team. But Riddle in a position right now where they could go Sylas in second. But that being said, Verdant could just lock Malphite now, ban Sylas immediately, ban Gwen maybe, and be comfortable putting the Malphite top. But that goes against what Verdant would like to do around that top side. That's the big thing. So Jinx is a uniquely powerful pick here. Verdant, they're not even thinking about saving top for a potential Malphite. They go to Jax, and now the Jinx has a very safe lane to play through towards on bot side. You would want to go the Thresh typically with the Jinx, but they pick the Nautilus that the Thresh would be bad into, and now Verdant also don't have the option to go to Thresh themselves. But yeah, I love Jinx compositions. I love them on Jinjo in particular, because Jinjo loves to play for those late game team fights. We saw the positioning he had on Sivir that got him that pentakill, and I think it makes it very difficult to draft a winning bot lane for Verdant now, especially given that the AD position is still open.
Did I just see that right? They've already picked top lane. They've already picked top lane. All right, no, my bad, my bad. A part of me was like,
oh, that's the last one.
What if Clyde
I don't know why you ban
support?
Ezreal, actually. What on earth? Why do you ban Ezreal?
Either way, though, I think that we need to see some sort of aggression from this bot lane. At this point, Erol can take the Annie into the mid lane. You can also play it support and try and be aggressive versus the Nautilus. Just put this Jinx down early.
That hover's lasted a while.
I mean, it should get
say more aggressive.
No. Oh,
don't talk about hovers.
It's Frio. It's Frio. It's Frio. It's Frio. It's Frio. A massive misunderstanding people had in the game, and probably the biggest one that was on display in the LEC 2 years ago, was the Aphelios versus Jinx matchup. Aphelios is best into compositions that want to permadive you, and Jinx is best at playing kite-based compositions, control-based compositions. That Veigar hover destroys the Aphelios, the Annie, the Lee Sin, the Jax, and there's no reason for the Jinx to move into range of the Aphelios at all. With the Aphelios, you have to play heavy through bot lane, but then you're not playing towards Nilla on towards the top side, otherwise the Aphelios is useless. So Draven, on the other hand, you have a similar issue in that you want to play heavy through bot lane, but at least it destroys the Jinx if she tries to push with her rockets. I think Verdant have fallen into a trap that we saw many teams fall into on the LEC last year, and as a result, I think Riddle have the optimal composition. They have a Jinx comp, they have full protect, they're into a composition that wants to dive, but isn't going to be able to do so, even though it's an Orianna Bull delivery system. So long as Fire Rain plays this Veigar out, Jinjo will be able to carry, and I think we're looking at a Riddle 3-0.
Yeah, this is a composition that does a very good job of keeping Jinjo alive. For Verdant, I think you've got a couple of options there, right? And if you can get long-range Moonlight Vigil, if you can get a Shockwave catching someone out, then maybe you can get that advantage in the fight. But fundamentally, Jinjo is good enough as an AD carry, Rudu, where those sorts of big, obvious cooldowns shouldn't really be hitting onto him.
Yeah, all of those things are countered by one thing, and it's flash. So if Jinjo's merely looking at his monitor, right, looking at those threats that are going to try and take him down, then he's going to be absolutely fine. The beauty of Jinx as well is if you have lethal tempo stacked up, you're able to space out Nilla quite easily. The leap strike is shorter than a Jinx's auto attack range when rockets and lethal tempo are stacked up. It might be a little more difficult if he's got counter strike and he uses his flash to get on top of you, but again, you've then also got your flash. I would like to see Gale Force for him this game because there are, these very easy to dodge abilities that take him down if he's got that Gale Force. There are a lot of threats that are on him, and that extra layering of safety is going to be necessary just because of the amount of threat that is going to be focused on him.
Veteran, I know that you were very, very hyped up on Riddle closing out this game with this comp and ensuring your victory in the prediction race, and obviously the minor title of winning the NLC.
Excuse me? Yeah, that goes on to my streak, right? I'm the lineal prediction champion of the ERLs. All right, this adds on to my streak. I've never lost this. All right, I'm not gonna lose it today because Riddle, they're gonna close. I didn't even think that Jinx needs the Gale Force in this game, and I think the Veigar is the guy that needs to put in the work, and I trust Fire Rain on these utility champions to see the opportunities, to see what he has to do in these group situations. And from that trust, Jinjo's going to be able to output the damage. And I think Verdant, they're going to get closed on today.
I think this might be one of the best cases of a utility champion as well, because not just does Fire Rain get to set up for Jinjo, he also gets to have 1,000 AP later on in the game and one-shot people that are caught out. This is going to be Fire Rain not just protecting his AD carry, but if Jinjo miraculously finds himself dead, Fire Rain can kill people as well, and with ease.
I do love the idea of Veigar, just as a concept. Yeah, he does 1 million damage, and if you walk within 50 feet of him, you're going to get stunned, and you're probably going to die. Well, Verdant are going to hope they don't walk into that cage too much, because it's do or die for them. Whilst getting to this finals may not be something that they expected, once you're in that position, you feel like you can win it, and you want to win it. And I guess what I'm looking for here is avenues that they can get back into this series by winning out this game.
So I'm looking early on. Kevo's gone for PTA. This is, very much geared toward a laning phase of Phelios, where you're trying to punish early on. Now, Jinjo has got Cleanse for Clive's stun, but Tax is pathing toward this bot side as well. There is a world where this early push from Riddle does cost them, but they've got it in soon enough that they're actually going to be fine. Tax is not here. Unless he was going to go red buff to bot lane, this gank was never going to work because of the way that Riddle have augmented the lane.
Yeah, that's a bit more of an accelerated jungle path than maybe you'd be used to. And hey, with Kiba moving into the bottom side jungle and now spotting out Taxa, that threat has been kind of neutralized.
I believe the phrase here is that Riddle are in their walls and they're just spotting them. Like every chance he gets, Winter's going to steal this.
No, Winter! That was very rude.
A bit more than rude, I'd say. Taking away the blue buff, Taxa is now again even more delayed. There's a 2-camp disparity between our two, and Winter's got Smite to contest this one as well. There's no reason for him to stop. Taxa's just constantly tanking this Gromp as well.
I'm not going to lie, I feel like we need to upgrade this invade from rude to mean, officially. As Taxa will take a mean bit of damage from Winter, and hey, I guess you banned the Vi away. It's been causing you so many troubles all over the series. Well, the Wukong doesn't look any better at the moment.
I mean, you see the brutality with which Riddle have been winning this bot side out, constantly contesting, constantly controlling it, littering the bot side with wards, but you also see Verdant's issue. They're matching it. When their Jax is passively winning top lane, it's nice he's passively winning top lane, but a Jax 5 CS lead is not what you're looking for at this stage of the game. Jax being 1 or 2 ways ahead is not what you're looking for at this stage of the game. You want to be playing heavy to that, you want to be trading, but Verdant, again, they seemingly unwilling to do so, and if the whole game stalls like this, the Jinx is the one ultimately that's going to benefit.
You want to be actively punishing this top lane being winning for Nilla, and that's not something that Verdant have gone for just yet. Now Taxa is up here, they don't have push in the mid lane, so they can't go for a 3v1 almost confirmed dive their way. Banderas with the Ghost is a little more susceptible. You can't really flash away from a resonating strike, for example.
Taxa trying to pay Winter back for that invade on the bottom side, but the Monkey King, a level up, is able to duel with the Lee Sin just fine. Nice attempt at the smite into Q play there from Taxa, but not able to find it.
-1 CS vanilla right there, that's all that is. Like that Rover's just meant that they're even in
I can't believe it,
farm.
man. I'm standing in my lane. I come here, my jungler smites away his CS. Okay, Riddle actually getting forced back in the bottom lane. I guess that's the power of the Aphelios and the Annie in these early stages.
It's a shame that Duckling is now playing for Verdant. Maybe that explains why why they've not done so well.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Duckling
That's
just
your
taking
universal
shots for
Duckling
zero?
voice.
Okay.
No, that's
Could be all right
Middlecott's
as, like,
Duckling
That
voice.
felt personal, Rudy. That felt personal.
He got coached by, was it Tarok that was coaching him for a little bit in the
I can't remember
jungle?
who coached him, actually.
Yeah.
But I think it was jungle. So I don't know if he's one of these like junglers that can play top lane. I know there was the whole thing with Whippo going over to North America and being a half decent jungler there, but I'm not sure if like
I'm a half
I'm not
decent
sure if it
jungler in
goes
North
the other
America,
way.
Middlecott. Let's not get over ourselves here.
You want to become an exceptional jungler? Because then there's another coaching service I can point you to. Not entirely
I'll
sure I'm
pass.
allowed to advertise it on
I'll
the.
pass.
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
But if you know,
Why
you
not?
know.
Look at the big wave, Middlecott. Look at the death.
Yeah, oh, it's a big wave. Oh, it's a big engage. Kiba, a little bit caught out here, and this is again early game proactivity from
Okay.
Verdant. You got to
Both
remember to
summoners
kill the
down.
guy though. First blood for Kevo. We've seen this
They might
before
get this
though.
as well.
It's about snowballing this forward.
Two
Taxa
flash.
under the tower. Another kill.
Oh,
For
so
Verdant.
close. Actually, so close to trading a kill on Kevo there. Does still have the cleanse, but doesn't have the flash anymore. Kevo burned both summoners, all summoners down actually for the side of Verdant, but they're able to get the kill on bot side. But again, does that matter if the Aphelios is going to struggle to even get into the fights at all later on? The Veigar and the Jinx both can just control their range against him, especially if the Jinx ends up going into the Gale Force, but doesn't even necessarily have to do that here. It's the Jax you want that lead on, and the Jax is actually just chilling in top lane, going relatively even against the Cassante. This is a slow push. The Cassante is actually chilling here. So yeah, you've got the kills on towards the Aphelios, but bear in mind, it's not as simple as if you get the gold lead at all, but where the gold lead goes and how well it can be used in the later stages of the game.
Matter or not, it's still better for Verdant that they've got those kills than that they've not, or than that they wouldn't have had them. And Kevo, getting those, getting any form of attention from his jungler this game feels better than the last two games where he'd just been getting perma-cease and desisted under his turret and dying. So he's going to feel at least a little more better in his adventures through the mid-game here. And now with that Drake live, having that advantage may well lead them into finding an objective that I don't think they've really had this entire series.
I will say though, whilst he's not got a Vi to contend with this game, he does still have to deal with this Wukong from Winter, which is kind of like the Vi, but
That
in
doesn't
a
fit my
big
narrative, I'm
circle.
afraid.
Might be looking for a gank in the top lane actually, as Nele and Banderas have just taken a pretty heavy trade, and this wave is not in a good spot for Verdant's man on top.
It's going to push into him. It's going to be fine. He just had to play respectful for that 10 seconds right there, and he did it. So, crisis averted for right now, unless they're going to go for a dive, in which case it's sound the alarm and top lane is doomed.
I don't know, I would say that Nilla having to play respectful is a bit of a crisis. Why do Verdant want this Jax to be doing anything other than fisting the top side? But they're not enabling him. Winter 7, on the other hand, he's perfectly fine to go up here, hold their win condition, just let his bottom midsection scale. Cly on the Annie.
Once again, a dive in the bot lane.
Kiba!
Taxa with a flash kick. Jinjo escaping under the tower, but Kiba has bought so much time.
Top lane?
Riddle, they're able to get the
Fire
kill
rain.
onto
He's
Banderas.
feeling it.
Fire rain out from Jinjo. Reset on the Jinx. And Clyde will be a victim of fire rain.
Absolute disaster for Verdant on the bot side. They overloaded. They had 4 members there, and they lose 2. Nillis somehow in the top lane found a solo kill in a 1v2 situation. We know why Verdant should be playing toward this Jax. He's not getting given the resources, but still finding those opportunities.
The interruption from Kiba on the channels in the bot lane here already happened by this point, but keeps Jinjo alive in the fight. Fire Rain recognizes the wave reset on mid lane, knows it's all about the grouping on bot lane here. Jinjo managing to nab the kill with the rocket, and Cly going down as well gives them the freedom to reset the wave here. Jinjo, he's on the board now. He's more than just even with the Aphelios. If they are even at any point, it's the Jinx that's always going to outscale. Fire Rain did his job, Kiba did his job, and again, because of this strong mid support, because of this strong mid jungle support midsection, Jinjo is now able to do his.
And the thing is, that wasn't just a dive, that was a bit of a microcosm of how team fights are going to be looking a little bit later, because yes, Kiba can provide all of this interrupt on the Nautilus, and you saw Fire Rain turning up there with the cage that made it impossible for Verdant to follow up on the rest of those plays, and if that's happening 10 minutes into the game, and it's going to happen 25 minutes into the game, where's your angle to actually play League of Legends?
I fear it does not exist. It gets very difficult, right, for Verdant, and ultimately there's going to need to be some changes made. They're going to need to step up in this game because they are down in gold. They are down in the series 2-0. They don't have anything left to lose. They've lost the 2 games that they can prior, and now they've just got to find their way back in. We've seen them in these situations before. They were down match point versus Nord last week. Erol, the rookie for Verdant, stepped up. Nille, in that top lane, found team fights where they have no purpose finding wins and managed to turn the game back around. And we're going to need to see that level of performance from them once again, but in this next game and within the next 10 minutes.
We even saw it a couple times in game 2, right? I think the phrase was, Verdant win a team fight they have no business of winning, but now they need to have win a game that, honestly, it doesn't look like they've got any business of winning either.
Plate on the bot lane for Jinx, but even more disastrous than this, that's a plate on the top lane for the Cassante. The Jack should be winning this matchup, but Verdant have spent so much time trying to put the Jinx behind that they've forgotten to put their own win condition significantly ahead in any way, shape or form. This isn't the situation the Jax wants to be in. He doesn't want a slow game, he wants a fast game in his favour, but instead we've got a fairly even game, and if it's in the favour of anyone right now, Riddle are the ones feeling comfortable.
Oh, this is looking pretty damn decent for Verdant. Clyde's going to get pulled back. There flashes away from the Super Mega Death Rocket, but here comes Winter, level 8 on the Wukong, but not able to find that crucial access.
Almost taking down Kiba, but Jinjo free firing means that Verdant can't commit too much further. And it's more plates into the Jinx. It's even worse in the bot side. Erol's here.
Careful!
Clyde getting a stun onto Jinjo, running away on the Jinx. The shockwave pulls him back.
Hello.
And Erol will chase him down with a clockwork wind up to get his first kill of the game.
Jinjo held flash there for the shockwave.
And Winter not going to be doing something similar. Using that summoner spell to get away. And hey, Erol, we said that he needed to be a carry for this game. Okay, he's on the board.
If your ADC doesn't use the tools that he has, then, you know, everything is all for naught. He easily gets out of the Orianna there, but he was way too aggressively positioned given the SSs on the map. The Veigar, though, look how many plates he's able to succeed with getting in mid lane there. Now he's just trying to zone out the Orianna, deny her some of this CS over in the midsection. Taxa, though, he thinks he sees it.
I mean, Fire Rain doesn't have flash for this, like, split second. There was a window for Taxa to go for a kick flash, but doesn't go for it. Now Fire Rain is probably going to be able to take the entire mid lane turret. Taxa's here to shield it. Nilla moving as well, but I think Riddle have got enough in the tank to just force this charge and force tier 1.
Oh my god.
First break, 13 minutes
in. No.
I hate that. I was wrong.
I think not. I actually think not first break 13 minutes in. How much HP is that on?
Riddle walks up, we're hearing the stream, and they're like, actually, no. Actually, dude, you're wrong.
I don't feel like taking that tower. They might do now.
30 seconds later. Right, okay.
Hey!
Hey!
So long as it's before 14 minutes, it matters. There you go. That's the new stance. And Kevo, Clyde, they're on the bouncing wave here, right? Right now, Jinjo could choose to start a slow push, or he could choose to just let them push in and try to get a gank from his midsection. Either way, they're in danger, and Taxa recognizes that. That's why he's leaning here. Oriana's in base, no teleport whatsoever. Riddle can opt to do what they want here. They either make the aggressive play, or they look for resets to get their carry spending the gold that they just acquired off of the back of this play. Herald is the next big objective to come up. That's where Riddle could maybe try to force a fight. But I would say at this point, I still think the damage favors Verdant. Riddle in a nice spot for the rest of the game, but they might want to avoid that Herald fight. Jinjo, though?
Caught in the bottom lane. Taxa going forward with the resurrection strike. They're kicking the Jinx in the face.
Me and Veteran both there just had a where we recognised that Taxa did not need to take that kill. Kevo was taking that one quite easily, but the kick there to secure, it is a kill on your Jinx, or onto the Jinx. Kevo, with a bit of pressure here, can take this turret. That Drake may well go down as well. It is still a win on the map for Verdant, but it's not as big a win as it could have been because that kill is infinitely more valuable on Kevo than it is Taxa.
A big cringe for me there also is just why does Jinjo keep extending like this on the Jinx? He's in good positions, he doesn't need to be going for the waves he's going for, but it seems he keeps trying to greed for item completions, greed for a finishing on that cull. He's not in a position to actually need any of that, but he keeps gifting kills over to Verdant. Verdant absolutely need these kills to win the opening fights to try to bring the map back in their favor. He needs to stop giving it to them. He's in a good position. Wow.
Okay. Okay, do you know what? Do you know what, Veteran? You're talking about his positioning,
That's how
maybe
it
overstepping
feels,
a little
Taxa.
bit.
That's how it feels. Now he knows. Now he knows how it feels.
Oh, he didn't have smite. It was just about to come off cooldown. Oh,
He knows
I hate
how
this
it
change,
feels
man.
now.
Right,
do you know what? I love
blame
that
Freak.
actually, because there was that whole meta where Jinx could just like one-shot objectives with a roll if you were trying to steal it. They nerfed it to bring the damage a little bit down. Then when they changed smite, they buffed it again so that Jinx ult does more damage to objectives once more.
It's equal. I think the max on Jinx ult is 1200, and when you have smite completed, it's also 1200.
But if you don't have smite, it's 0.
If you don't have smite, don't do the objective.
True. Don't tell Yankos that.
Yeah. Come on, bro. Oh, a little bit of a miscalculation from Taxa, but it's the second Drake of the game. It's not massive right now. I think the thing that Verdant are going to be a bit more concerned with is the fact they don't have this mid lane tower. Whilst they've still been able to make a couple of plays towards the bot side, it just makes it this little bit riskier to push against Jinjo in the mid lane.
Kevo using the Chakram Q as a placeholder turret. Makes me laugh a little. Kevo uses the Gale Force, though. And you were right, Veteran. Jinjo's opted into this Gale Force. Don't need it. Or opted into the Kraken Slayer, excuse me.
Yep.
Doesn't need the Gale Force to be positioning properly. Just do damage.
That's the if, though. If he is positioning properly. Right now, I'm looking at that tower advantage, being the way that Jinjo has been playing, they may as well not have the tower advantage in mid lane at all. So long as he adjusts his positioning, he has the superior build. He's a based anti-Gale Force gamer. But if he keeps positioning the way he's been doing so, he may regret not having the Gale Force. What the Gale Force does allow you to do is play extremely safe at the start of the fights and then engage back in with the Gale Force. You shouldn't be trying to use a Gale Force reactionary at all. But if you have the proper positioning and you have the proper ranges, especially in a setup like this where you have zone control, you don't really need it.
Verdant are looking to catch up Banderas here on the top side. Whilst they are down in this second game in terms of gold, they have still been able to find decent number of kills for themselves, and they're not that far behind.
But it's kind of disgraceful to talk about this, but that is the first time that I've seen them lean towards Nyla all game. We're 18 minutes in, the Jax is their clear win condition, and that's the first time that they've leaned to him. They're still ahead on tempo on the map. Both Heralds, one on midsection and now one here on the bot lane, secure their first resets against this Jax. They're in full control of the map state, and the first time Verdant actually moved to the Jax, they end up giving up more of the map.
It's always this give and take, and it's one that Verdant always seem to be taking just a little less of.
Ooh, okay.
No way they dive. No
Very
way.
close to pulling the trigger onto Taxa. I mean, they could do... Oh, look how low that tower is. Just dive past it. It'll be absolutely fine.
No.
But I mean,
No
the scenario that Verdant are in right now feels even worse because it's so difficult to approach this tower. Jinx is raining rockets on you from a million miles away. Fire Rain is inapproachable because of that baby cage. You're just bleeding out on this side lane.
Ooh, Nilla should be staying to hit this turret. I don't know that they can't try and extend even further because Riddle, they're looking to try and finish this one off. They've done the War of Attrition battle where they've been poking out Clyde, poking out Kevo, and now it makes them more dangered to step up to this turret, and this cage starts it.
Oh my god.
Oh, Kevo opening up with the Moonlight Vigil, but just honestly tickling the health bars of Riddle.
They're winning the map
Really?
so hard right now. They don't even feel like they can maintain the Jax on top side because if the Jinx gets the reset and knows that the Jax is on top side, she may just keep moving forward and you may just lose the inhibitor on bot in a scenario where Baron is a very, very real threat. Now what Riddle want to do is they want to be able to set up, but Nyla Taxa is not letting them recall.
Yeah, actually, they're going to be
He is
going
down.
forward onto Riddle. Ultimate has been popped by Nilla. Grandmaster's Might unavailable. And hey, delaying those resets is good because next Drake is spawning in 20 seconds. Does that mean that Verdant are going to have that position first?
That ping on the Baron, though, that's blue pings going in mass towards the Baron. I don't think they care about that one Drake so long as they can go and secure control over that objective. It is a mountain. I think as Jax, you're going to be very nice about that, especially with the double shields that you got, triple shields actually, that you have going on your comp. But Riddle, they think they could sneak this.
Well, they're not going to be able to sneak it with a blue trinket. Their plans have been rumbled, and Verdant are going to be able to take the Drake.
Go on. Art it. Come on, Jinjo. You've done
Jinjo
it.
moment.
Come on. Come on.
Taxa's
Come
got smite
on.
this time.
Oh,
Come on!
Oh, he didn't.
He didn't have the balls. It's fine.
No. I believe with Verdant pushing, we'll say at least pseudo-aggressively in this mid lane, they've got 3 people lurking around. That turret is up, not necessarily for grabs, but certainly something that they're going to be looking towards. And that chip damage, if Riddle leave it unattended for 2...
Ooh, flash! Hook from Kiba! Big shockwave though from Erol helps disengage it for the time being, but on the backline, Banderas is just going after health bars, all out on Cly, who will eventually die. Nilla TP's into nothing. Riddle with a kill, looking to push.
The timing of that...
Baron time though, right? Like, they have the cage coming in from the Veigar, they do control these choke points really well, they have the numbers advantage. Clyde, yes, he's a support, but we saw from the first game how impactful that flash tibbers can be, how impactful the CC chain can be, and Riddle, they have the tools to delete this.
They're the tools to turn as well. They've come off, and Cyclone is still ready if Riddle want to pull another engagement. It's a good job from Verdant, they stop the Baron from going down. And they don't lose anybody else for it, and they may even be able to extend into this mid-tier 1 as well.
It's quite a patient contest there from them, but they're not going to be able to get anything in the mid lane. Riddle responding to them well, and this very much feels like a game where Verdant are down, because it's become very, very cagey, even though we are still in this mid-game point where in previous games, we'd had a bit more action. We'd had these teams being a bit more liberal with their cooldowns.
I don't know where Verdant can go from here to try to get an opportunity for a fight. They've got very little control over the rift. You can see that the vision that they've got is extended to, but no further than the river. And they're going to have to try and use that to try and find a pick, try and find a Lee Sin moment with Taxa. Lee Sin has no flash at the minute. Taxa's certainly struggling to find these engagements, and without flash as well, that becomes even harder because it means you have to use a ward hop for a potential insec. And everything just becomes so much more difficult when this Lee Sin doesn't have flash. Riddle have done their due diligence once again. They've swept out the vision around the Baron and in the river and in the pit specifically. They start hitting it, and they've still got easy turn tools.
And Nilla is slowly making his way over towards the topside river from Verdant, so they know this is going on. Taxa getting a Q tag onto the Baron. How he would love to steal this one now. But hold on. Nilla maybe a little bit caught out here. Leap strikes back to Kevo. And Riddle once more peel away from the Baron and disengage.
The Affiliate Assault is also down from Kevo. That leaves him very exposed. The Veigar cage still coming down time after time after time. Kevo, he needs that ultimate to escape the engages that Riddle has. But Riddle, you know, they are fine with the zone control. They're fine kiting back. Jinzhou already at the point where he outranges everybody on the opposing team. It's too easy for them to play these fights so long as Jinzhou positions properly. He's opted into the Zeal item second, knowing that he is ahead. The move speed will help him maintain the positioning that he needs. He's not thinking about the Bloodthirster second, which we've seen a lot from other regions. That's what you pick if you think you're going to need to survive through burst. There is a lot of burst on the side of Verdant, but Jinzhou, confident none of it can reach him.
I think the flank angles are going to be very, very important, especially for Nilla in this game, because you saw around that Baron he was trying to approach from one side and Riddle were able to get on top of him fairly conclusively. The thing about disengaged comps is generally they can only really disengage in one direction. Once that cage is in front of Fire Rain, he can't put it behind him. Third time, maybe going to be the charm for Riddle as they are starting up the Baron once more. And once more, all members of Verdant are in the area, but the Purple Worm going down pretty quickly. They're going to peel away again, getting a hook down onto E-Roll. No shockwave available, and this time the Baron a little bit more certain.
No flash of Kevo still, so a contest again, very difficult. Moonlight Vigil is barely off cooldown. They'll have it up in the next 5-10 seconds or so, but Riddle, they can turn. They've still got Cyclone, or they haven't actually. They've got very little tools.
Ooh, Kiba actually a little bit isolated. Still going to get a flash down onto Kevo. Gets blown up. Kiba is dead. Winter takes Clyde, and Verdant are diving into the pit. It's getting turned around though. Nile, the last one left standing. And the Jacks will opt to back away instead of contest the Baron. 25 minutes into game 3. Riddle with an advantage in a game which could decide the series.
Kiba shoots, Kiba scores. Kevo not in a position to make range against Jinx. There, in fact, is no solid range against Jinx, so once Kiba locked him in place and gave his life for it, that was death for Kevo there on the Aphelios. The Jinx struggled in the early game with the positioning, got picked off on the brushes here, but once the life was given here by Kiba, the map was split, Jinx gets one reset, rolls into the rest, and Riddle able to create the space, able to keep the peel going, even on Winter 7's side with that Black Cleaver Divine Sunder Wukong, able to give some burst in. Riddle in firm control of the game. They have a 6k gold lead. They have the stats from a mountain, they have the stats from an ocean. 7 and 6 is the only thing they can see, but they probably feel the reality of the situation.
And maybe just 1-2 more team fights that should be fairly easy for Riddle. Standing between them and an NLC championship, standing between them and a main stage position at EMEA Masters. Winter's in this mid lane, they're looking for another skirmish, trying to defend this tier 1 turret, while when we look at the top lane, Fire Rain, Jinzhou, wailing away on these turrets.
Oh no!
Yeah, and spoiler alert guys, you don't push faster than a Jinx and a Veigar with Baron buffer. You can see the chase from Winter there. It's just about delaying Verdant getting back to their base there. Starting to move over now, but this inhib tower is not long for this world. Again, Kiba just running interference in the jungle. As Riddle get more objectives.
The E from Veigar there, so impactful as well, prevented Verdant going through the corridor and getting a flank on Jinzhou, and Kiba covering the other path allows them to get that turret on top side, which opens up potential flank angles for Banderas or Winter 7 on that Wukong. Riddle playing this well, but again, it feels like Verdant just kind of gave them that macro position, and every time Riddle are given a strong macro position, they pull the trigger.
Fire Rain just permanently using the wave. No turret here now. He's just going to take this. One more auto attack, puts the cage up, zoned off, and now mid lane's next. Another hook.
It is clinical. It is disturbing from Riddle.
Number 1, baby.
A game
I mean Riddle, of course.
Being executed in very, very clean fashion. 4 members of Verdant here to defend, here to try and keep their title hopes alive, but it will be futile as Nile dives into the backline. His backline is getting ripped apart by by Fire Rain. Finally, he's finding access onto Jinjo, but it means nothing. Riddle will knock aside Verdant. They will slam them down. They will stamp their authority on the NLC, claim victory, claim the title, and take down Verdant.
Jinx, baby. Jinx, baby. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, yeah, I mean, they were always ahead on the meta, right? This was the team that figured out the utility jungle meta, utility from mid lane and jungle, playing these kinds of bridge champions. They were the guys that had that setup the whole time. It was up to the rest of the NLC to catch up with that understanding. And when it looks like they might be finally catching up to it, they bring out the new AD carry meta on the bot lane. These long-range hyper carry champions, they are the new meta on the bot lane. And Riddle, they are the first ones to bring them out as well. Riddle were one step ahead of the NLC in their understanding of League of Legends at every point, and they were in the finals as well, and that has propelled them to being the champions.
Very convincing finals here. No better a first seed would I be wanting to send to EMEA Masters. That was a meticulous affair, honestly. They never really gave Verdant an inch. There was one fight in game number 2 that looked like, oh, Verdant, they've got a chance in this game, but game number 3 here, again, every move that Verdant made on the map, Riddle answered and one-upped in most situations. It was a fairly mundane affair in all finals as far as they go, but Verdant, they didn't really have any answers.
No, and I think that the Verdant that we saw today, I don't think is necessarily indicative of the Verdant that we've been seeing throughout the playoffs, because they have been this proactive team, they've been this aggressive team. But what impressed me from Riddle throughout this series is the way that they were constantly adapting. It felt like every single game there was a play that Verdant made that 5 minutes later, it meant that Riddle would win the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a team that you can expose those kinds of weaknesses to. Every single time that Riddle had a position where they could get... That's just such a feels bad what you're seeing on the screen right now. Every single time that it felt like Riddle were given an open map state to take advantage of, Riddle recognized that, and they've always been better at recognizing those states than any other team. So when Verdant give it to them, it's not like when they gave them to Nord, it's not like when they gave them to Ruddy. Riddle will be like, okay, we're happy to take the trade because we know we win the trade. And if Riddle see that they have a winning trade, they go all in on it. They are like woodpeckers on that. They will tap it until the entire tree falls, and Verdant's did.
And I tell you what, they've kind of hit their expectations, right, for what we wanted to see from this Riddle squad. We came into the start of the split saying, yo, these guys, EMEA Masters, that is absolute minimum. Well, they've gone better, and they've won the entire damn thing.
Again, pre-NLC expectations were an EMEA Masters appearance. They're in the main stage. They have an NLC championship to go with it as well. So really makes a lot of sense and was exactly what we're hoping for from them.
Yeah, and whilst we could sing the praises of them, we are now going to be joined for an interview by Verdant's head coach, Tom Kick. Obviously, mate, I imagine that this is not feeling great for you, a load of mixed emotions. You've got a team here that has massively overperformed in the playoffs, qualified for EMEA Masters, but on the day, just about second best. How has this split been for you, and especially this ending to it?
Yeah, of course, it's easy to see that the ending sucks, but looking at the positive things, we have reached and done a lot of good things. We were set out and predicted to be the 4th best team in the league, and people were pretty set on that. So by 3-0ing Ruddy in the first round and getting a 3-2 to Nord, and then actually qualifying for EMEA Masters has been extremely good, and we're really happy about that. Of course, you will never really be satisfied as a team, as a player, as a coach, unless you win the last thing, which is the finals, and the other finals after that in EMEA Masters. But we gotta try to stay focused because Plains comes quick around the corner.
I think then what does... Okay, go, Baron.
Oh yeah, no, look, I think that when it comes to Verdant, I was even surprised that you made it in towards 4th. I think if everybody looked at the opening half of the NLC, Veneer were the ones that looked like they were the closest to developing to that mark. but you guys scraped your way in at every point, right? You just barely made it through this section. You just barely made it through this stage. You just barely make it to playoffs. But once you hit playoffs, you really, really hit your stride with your fairly unique setup. One big part of that was the development of your mid laner, Errol. He went from someone people were talking about as like, this guy has some kind of potential, to a guy who was suddenly contesting with some of the best mid laners the NLC has produced, especially as a damage carry. Can you comment on the development of Errol over the course of the split? Because it's his highlight plays that really cemented you guys your playoffs position.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great things. For Errol, he has been working very hard this season. He knew, like, when we get into the season, he's kind of the rookie, he's the new guy. There's a lot from him to learn from the other players we have on the team. So we've been using a lot of time to just focus on the process, focus on the end goal, making sure that we know each step that needs to be taken, and he's been working wonderfully, being open to try out new things, and step by step when we've gotten there. So I think he has had a very, very good season. It's very good to see.
I mean, one last thing, by the way, congratulations on joining the kitchen gang. Me and Rudu, massive respect to you for that. Loving the kitchen over there, loving the kettle especially. I have to remark on the open dishwasher technique. I do like using the open dishwasher technique myself. It's not on display today, but congratulations on an exquisite taste.
Oh,
no, the kitchen speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. But Tom Kick, but before we let you go, mate, I just want to open the floor to you. Anyone you want to shout out, anyone you want to thank for this split, and I wonder if you've got any messages for the teams at EMEA Masters play-ins.
Interesting. Wow. Never thought
He is muted.
before.
Yeah, can you hear him?
I cannot hear Tom
I
Kick.
never thought about it like that before, actually, Tom. That's insane. That actually might be one of the best things I've ever heard said in this interview, to be honest.
Am I back now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we've got you back, Tom Kick.
That's
Okay,
good.
I
Can you
don't
just
know
leave
what's
it at that, mate?
happened.
Like,
Yeah.
I
You understand.
I mean, what
me,
you just
understand
said.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I mean I never thought about league like that before, to be honest, and especially not like league development. So like, that was perfect. I don't think you could ever repeat that.
No,
I agree.
Everyone that heard that, obviously very, very important. But Tom Kick, before we let you go, we've got to give you that opportunity to say your piece, say your thanks for everybody. That's up to you to get here today.
Yeah, I want to really thank everybody on the team, the staff, the players, the other coaches. We've been working really hard. We have gone super far, as far as nobody really expected, and I'm really, really happy about that. So now this next step, just keep on focus for play-ins. I think we can do a lot of good stuff there. We learn from this final, take it with us, and hopefully we keep on smashing. Thanks for all the support from all the fans and everybody that's been rooting for it. It means a lot.
Well, I tell you what, mate, that support is only gonna go up come EMEA Masters, mate. So you be ready for that. But Tom Kick, obviously not a great situation for you guys, but thank you so much for joining us for the interview, and I can't wait to see Verdant on the Rift next time.
Congrats to Riddle.
Yeah.
All right, here he is.
Hello.
The man in the bot lane, the mythical support himself, and NLC champion Kiba from Riddle Esports. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. I think I played really, really well today, actually. Like, this was probably the best. Like, no joke. Normally I play a bit worse than officials, but today I was just on, not gonna lie. Like, I think that game 2 made me feel so confident going into the third one. Even when we did some mistakes early, I just knew we could win because, I don't know, I was just in like a flow state and stuff, so I feel pretty good now.
You've been a champion of your own abilities throughout this entire split, really. If you had to give an option for the most valuable player for this series, are you going for yourself as well? I don't need to ask that.
Easily.
I know who he's voting for. Who's your MVP for this season? Or this split, this series?
I'm gonna be honest. I know Johan got like a MVP of the league, but now a jungler's called Winter or something. I don't know why he changed, but so I mean, Johan is gone, you know, so it has to be me, right? Like, he took all the MVPs, so I'll take it today. Also, I do think everyone played well. Like, what Verdant were doing, I don't know if you guys watched NLC last split, but it's literally what we did on the talent team last split. Like we just camp top. That's all we do.
Yep.
And so I know how to deal with it. You just slow push bot and just watch as Kevo realizes the 3-wave crash he's not going to be able to take. That happened every game. And I think Banderas, for example, he was an MVP in his own right? Because he understood what they need to do to win. Like, I just told him, just drop the ego, man. Pick the Ornn. I mean, you saw the last game, they were banning Malphite, Ornn. Like, these guys, they were down bad. Like, it kind of showed that they only had, like, one way to win. Which, yeah. So, I think he also did well, even though it might not look like it for the viewer's perspective. But everyone did their part today, and I think that's why every game looked, I wouldn't say smooth, but, you know, we won, right? So, who cares about the context?
Well, I mean, you did win every game sub 30 minutes, so I think once you guys got to that point where you were comfortable, you were able to close it out fairly cleanly. And I do just want to have a little bit of a chat about that top lane matchup, because there was a little bit of, not beef, but there was a little bit of friendly competition between Banderas and Nile going into this matchup and playing against each other in the Telia League and finals. Banderas, you say that he was like just being a role player. I don't feel like he really stepped up to the plate. I was expecting some big 1v1 champions. You got the guy on Ornn every game. What's going on there?
I don't care what he thinks. I'm the captain of this team, and I say, man, drop the ego, shut the fuck up. You don't talk during draft review. You get picked Ornn, don't speak. That's what happened. And he did it, you know? He's a soldier, and that's why we won. Like, it was really
terrible matchups, by the way. Because Sanse matchup in the Jax matchup, I want to fucking end it all if I'm doing that.
Here's the thing, veteran. I don't care, because I know they can't end the game through top, and they all will get 2 items. So we just win, you know?
It's the most on the planet, man. It's actually.
Well, they ended up banning it. They ended up banning it.
Yes,
so...
that was so weird to me though, because they banned it, but then they didn't modify their playstyle to, you know, take advantage of a better top matchup. You know, they just kept playing defensive bot because, like, again, like he said, you do 3-man slow push bot, and Kev was like, guys, you have to be here, I'm dead. You have to be here, or I'm dead. And they end up pivoting the whole map there, and Nyla never gets ahead. So congrats on you guys for that lead.
I do think I want to congratulate them for actually, like, I think this run that they've made is crazy, by the way, because I thought they were hella homeless before playoffs started. Like, I thought that they would get smoked by everyone. Like, I even thought Roddy would legit 20-minute every game, because Roddy plays like very. I think Roddy is a better team than us, by the way. I just think their individuals sometimes lack, and they don't have the clutch factor, I guess, if you want to call it that. But like, their pure team play is really good. If the game doesn't go boom in 10 minutes, they're pretty good. But it went boom because there was a huge top gap. And people choked and whatnot, right? But in general, like, I want to give Verdant a lot of props, because I don't think anyone expected them to make it this far. I mean, I for sure did, you know? When I was watching the lower bracket, I was like, okay, so our next strategy against Nord, and then we just kind of realized, wait, Nord lost. Wait, what? We're playing against Verdant. You know, we were prepping against Nord, like, the second we beat them, you know? Because we just assumed they would make it. But yeah, I mean, props to Verdant. I honestly think they should keep their heads high. I think A-Roll, especially, this guy is mega underrated, by the way.
Yes.
Like, he was the biggest random. Okay, sorry if you're watching A-Roll, but you were the biggest random ever, right? And he comes into this league. I don't even know what he was ranked in tier list. Not that they matter, because I was ranked like 5th best or something, and I think I'm by far the best. But he was ranked really low on stuff, and honestly, he stepped up really hard. Like, he should. Like, he surprised me the most out of every player in the entire season, by the way. Like, this guy, I think he was a main carry for his team, and he deserves a lot of props.
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad that you're doing that, because it's one thing for us as casters and commentators to look at a team and go, okay, we think that this guy's good, we think that the way that they play is good, but to come from their opponent, I imagine that is a much more impactful, and there's a lot more weight behind those compliments. So massive props to you shouting that out. But let's buff up Kibra a little bit. Well, are there anyone that you want to shout out to sort of help you guys on your journey here? And you got any messages for the people at EU Masters waiting for you?
I think the people I want to shout out, I have 2 sets. Okay, first I'll shout out the people who helped us to split, and then after we'll go for something else. Okay. So firstly, I think the amount of help I got last split from Taxa and Sencooks was immense, because I got put in like a more of a leadership position on this team. And I think I could only do that because I got to basically shadow how Sencooks and Taxa acts and behaves, like in review, in general in game, and always are calm. I think they're a big reason as to why I could like do this, that I did this split. Hopefully it continued your masters as well, right?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate those two, and yeah, I mean they're really good, and yeah, I think everyone saw it as well with Texa, right? Like his team was really solid, I think, fundamentally, and I think he's a big part of that. So yeah, also shout outs to Texa and Sencrux and our coaching staff, of course, and all these people, other people, but they got coaching staff of the split, so we don't care about them that much. I want to make sure that he gets more recognition, like Texa especially, because like I know how he is when you play with him, and he is like a radio tower. Like he's giving information to everyone at all times. And yeah, shout outs to Texa as well, my homeboy. Yeah, shout outs to everyone.
Spreading the love here, Kiba. Absolutely great stuff. Well, we're gonna let you go now. We're gonna let you go and celebrate.
I have a shout out.
The victory.
I have a shout out.
Who's number 2?
I bet I can guess who.
No, guys, it's a couple of shout outs. Just give me a minute, okay? Okay, first I want to shout out Jelly Notes, Alter, Reptile, miss you, bro. Hope you get better soon. Nash, Ilis, Den Voxne, Coing, Elliot, Shoy, Fatichan, Kerberos, Kreis, Lunkas, Kadir, Nida, Nice Guy Ben, Noah, Freya, Royal, Sebal, Lucky, Hicham,
Oh my god.
Tone, Rai, Danke from Gamer Legion, No Fly by One, No Name, Noodle, Sahira, Syndrome, Micro, and Unforgiven. That's it. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate everything you've done this split. Honestly, like, yeah, it's been a pretty decent split considering what happened to this region, and I think you guys are a big part of it as well. So, thank you for not losing faith or whatever, or like not wanting to do the job. I don't know. It looked kind of hopeless at the start, you know.
Campaign for Kiba won in the end, alright? The campaign for Kiba won.
Thank
you guys so much,
man. Well, man, great to speak to you. Massive congratulations on the title. I can't wait to see you lifting the EMEA Masters Trophy, mate.
Anyways, I gotta go. Bye guys.
See you later.
We're breaking up. We gotta go.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. But I'm not gonna lie. If I was a Riddle fan right now, there's a little bit of me that wants to get ahead of myself, because if you're gonna win a final, that is the fashion to do it in.
There's nothing really that can go against that statement, Middlecott. They've obviously got to try and best themselves now against, like we know, the best the EMEA has to offer. It's just an exciting time. Always the best part of regular season ending and playoffs ending is realizing that we get to see them do it all again in a bigger stage with bigger stakes and bigger hopes on the line.
Well, you guys want to talk about getting ahead. You know who else got ahead off of the back of this victory?
It's your predictions.
That's the predictions.
Himself as the two-time prediction champion, undisputed, unequaled. Once it was never going to end any other way. We all know it was never going to end any other. I missed 2 weeks of predictions, and I am still the undisputed number one. All right. You're welcome,
Middlecott,
guys.
do you want to know the biggest cope that we've got right now?
What?
We beat Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, and with that, I think that is a perfect place to close out our broadcast. Massive congratulations to Riddle for the victory, claiming the championship. Commiserations to Verdant, but obviously we're going to be cheering on both those guys as they head to EMEA Masters. Rude Dude, Veteran, thank you very much for joining me on the caster desk this evening. I have been Middlecott. Be good to each other. We'll see you later. Oh, I love Kiba.